We're on now, are we?
Yes, live now.
Right. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Daventry District Council's Planning Committee. I will introduce to the people that are in the waiting room and speakers and everything, the officers of the council. First of all, I will call them by the Christian names, the officers. So Catherine, a very important lady, she'll be taking the minutes. So we've got to get that right. We've got Tony Gillett, who's the director, who's in charge of one of our directors who's in charge of planning. He'll be overseeing it. We've got two planning officers. We've got Keith Thursfield and Eamon, and we've got solicitor for tonight, who is Jamie. So I shall refer to officers by their Christian names. All councillors I shall refer to by councillors' names.
And what about Jill Kennedy, Chairman?
I beg your pardon, sorry?
You forgot Jill Kennedy.
I forgot Jill. We've got a very nice lady called Jill Kennedy, who will be overseeing the operation as well. Correct, Jill? Well, yes, it will be. Right, there's a few things to read out, I'm afraid, before the meeting starts, or I'm not afraid. First of all, do we need to have a roll call, Tony, or not?
Yes, it would be a sensible thing to do, Chairman, so members of the public can understand who the committee members are. Right. So I think if you're comfortable, we'll ask Catherine to do that now.
I will do. Catherine, can you go through and members can say yes, they're here, or not answer, whatever.
So members, if you could confirm that you can see and hear the proceedings, please. Councillor Alan Chantler.
Yes to both, Chairman.
Councillor Stephen Dabbs.
Yeah, see and hear, thank you.
Councillor Rupert Frost.
Yes, many thanks, good evening.
Councillor Jonathan Harris.
Yes to both, thank you.
Councillor Cecile Irving Swift.
Yes to both, thank you.
Councillor David James. Councillor
David,
James.
you're muted.
Yes to both.
Councillor Malcolm Longley.
Yes to both.
Councillor Peter Matton.
Yes to both, thank you.
Councillor Kevin Parker.
Yes to both.
Councillor Ken Ritchie.
Yes to both.
Councillor Ian Robertson.
Yes to both.
Councillor David Smith.
Both good.
Councillor Mark Wesley.
Yes to both.
And Councillor Steve Osborne.
Yes, I'm here, thank you. Right, thank you for that, Catherine. I'm going to give the bits of housekeeping first, so that you're all aware what will be happening during the meeting. We've done the roll call. We're asking people to switch their mics off when they're not using. So mute yourself, because we hear background noises and other people do have a job to hear. Speakers will have 3 minutes to speak, and then you will hear the voice of Catherine, who will shout, "Time's up, Chairman." She will shout as soon as the 3 minutes is finished. As soon as I hear her shout 3 minutes, I shall ask you to please stop. So please don't go over the 3 minutes. Oh, somebody else come in. Don't hiss and cheer and boo. I'm sure you won't. And when we get to the vote on the proposal, Catherine will ask each member in turn whether they're for the proposal, whatever the proposal may be, whether it's for approving the application or for refusing the application, and she'll go around each member in turn. Right, I think that completes the housekeeping. Now we can go back to the agenda. The first item is to sign the minutes as a true and correct record. That will be done when possible. Is it everybody's wish? Just put your hand in front of you if you're happy with that. Everybody seems to be happy. Nobody against? No. Okay. Apologies for absence. You have one, don't you, Catherine?
Yeah, apologies received from Councillor Daniel Cribbin, Chair.
Thank you. There's no others because we're all there here. Disclosable interests.
Yes, Chairman, I have one.
Yes,
It's-
I'll take you first, Councillor James.
Okay, it's DA 2020-0312. This particular property backs onto land that belongs to me, and I have had occasion to have words with the new owner, and it would be best if I don't take any part in discussion of this case.
Okay, so other people know, if anybody declares an interest like that, they will be shut out into the waiting room while the discussion takes place. Councillor Longley.
Yeah, not sure of the significance of this or not, but when we talk about the first item, which is 0144, then I do have interest in property on the opposite side of the road, on the old Harbour Road, which is opposite to where that application is. And secondly, there's an application with regard to Steepleton Lodge Farm. I have no more connections with it, but at one time I owned the farm and sold it to the current applicant.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. Right, party whipping arrangements.
Chair.
Sorry, I didn't see you.
Councillor Ritchie wishes to speak.
I didn't see you, Councillor Ritchie. I do beg your pardon.
It's a small point. When it comes to the very last item on the agenda,
yes,
about tree protection, I don't live next to it. I'm not that far down the road from it, however.
Right, but you've got no other interest.
I don't. No.
No. Okay, thank you. Party whipping arrangements. There are none.
None,
Just to
Chairman.
explain to members of the public, we don't get together either in political groups or any other groups to decide how we're going to vote beforehand. We vote on the information that we have in front of us written down and what is presented to us on the evening. Right, there is one application which has been withdrawn, which is the last application in Sulby. The reason it's not on the agenda tonight is it still had another one day to go, I believe. So so that full consultation can be taken. It'll be on the next one, presumably. So we'll go to the first item on the agenda, which is the application which borders Brixworth and Scaldwell. Over to you, officers.
Thank you, Chairman. Hopefully you can see that, everybody.
Yes, that's okay, Keith.
Yeah, okay. This is, as it says there, an outline application for commercial industrial use on the northern side of Brixworth, just to the north of the existing industrial estate. It's for up to 33,500 square metres potentially. But as you'll see from the report, there's possibility of various options and various sizes of building. As I say, the site lies to the north of Brixworth there, as you see beyond the Mercedes complex. And that just shows it again in the wider context of the village and the village confines. So yes, it is outside the village confines. There's the aerial photo. I think the significant thing to pick out from the aerial photo is there's a large wooded area on the middle of the site, and that is going to be retained. That just shows you the distances to some of the nearby villages, Hanging Houghton, Scaldwell and Spratton. And these are some indicative plans of how it might be laid out, showing various arrangements of units, small units, medium-sized units and larger units. Again, there's some facts and figures there which show how it could potentially be broken up. Probably the most important picture is this one, which effectively shows how it's going to be broken up into 3 zones. And the significance of the zones is obviously the various restrictions on the amount of floor space for the various buildings. But also zone 1 in particular will have a lower height, so it has less visual impact. The height's going to be restricted to 9 metres, whereas on the other 2 sites, it's 11 metres. You'll also see, as part of the proposal, there's a roundabout, a new roundabout proposed on the bypass. and that shows it in more detail and significantly in line with the County Council Highways request. There are two new bus stops to be provided, and you'll see as reference to that both in the planning conditions and the recommendation that it be included in a section 106. And these are obviously the photographs now, just showing some of the views from the bypass going north and south. That's obviously looking south, going back towards Brixworth. You can see the church steeple there on the horizon. And this is the road where it goes back into the existing Mercedes Avenue. So there's a proposal to link into that, and there was some concern about whether that was possible, but that shows you the tracking drawings, and Highways have said they're happy with that. So this is just showing Mercedes Avenue and Scaldwell Road. Shows you the Mercedes complex. That's a view looking back from the Scaldwell junction, looking back into the site there. And you'll see we put some dotted lines on to show what the approximate height of the buildings would be seen in the distance. They're very similar, if not a little bit lower than the existing Mercedes buildings, and there's a cross section there that shows you what it would look like from various angles. You can see the cross sections, north, south, east and west. And that's just another picture taken from the extension to Mercedes Avenue, which disappears out into the countryside as an informal track. And again, that's looking back towards Mercedes and back towards the site. And obviously that's looking back towards the church. And the A508 is hidden behind the hedgerow. So that shows you that, hopefully. I was going to say the application is effectively one that's not covered by an allocation in the local plan, but it has been with us during the process of the local plan, and I think you'll see in the report there's reference made to the inspector's reasoning when he modified policy EC4 in the local plan that allowed for expansion of these strategic employment areas. And obviously this is a strategic employment area in Brixworth, and I think the significance in the Brixworth case is that it's full up. So from that point of view, you have nowhere else to go if you want to expand your business in Brixworth, and that's really the premise of this, I think. So having thought about it long and hard and consulted with planning policy and considered policy EC4 and various other policies, we consulted our policy colleagues, and they came to the conclusion that on the basis of the evidence that had been submitted by the applicant over a number of months, that there was a justification for this proposal. And although it might go beyond the immediate need, there is obviously a benefit of putting in something like this, which gives you critical mass. I was just going to show an example. Hopefully I've got Google, which I can show you. I did have it anyway. I'm not sure where it's gone now. Pity. Anyway, I was going to try and show you the layout of the existing industrial estate, but the one that sits in here to the north of the one that sits into the north of the industrial estate there has particularly difficult layout, shall we say, because it was designed piecemeal. And the idea behind this is obviously you get critical mass, which allows you to gather the money together to provide the additional facilities, the roundabout and the bus shelters and the contributions towards travel plan monitoring, etc. And also you do get a proper layout as a result of this. You don't get piecemeal and everybody's working to a master plan. So although it might at this stage go beyond what is immediately demonstrably necessary, we feel it does allow for future expansion and better planning. So all in all, on that basis, Chairman, we've recommended it for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. We have 4 speakers. The first speaker is Emre Amarak. I hope I've pronounced it right, from Scaldwell. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm Emre Amirak. I live in Scaldwell and I'm representing many other villages, not only in Scaldwell, but in Brixworth and Lamport as well. The overwhelming opinion of the residents in the surrounding villages is that the evidence for the necessity of this application is far from clear. It is against a number of local planning policies and the potential benefits do not outweigh the breaches of these policies. The evidence presented by the applicant to demonstrate a local need is very weak. Only 4 letters of support out of more than 50 businesses, 2 of which have been withdrawn, while units within a 10-minute drive are lying unoccupied. The 6-month-old local plan part 2 specifically asks for clear evidence to justify the expansion of capacity at an SEA and that the scale of any expansion must be appropriate. The development of 33,000 square meters of floor area is disproportionately large. This development would solely cater for outside need and not the needs of this SEA, and the proposed planning conditions are very easy to manipulate, so do not afford any protection. Although Northamptonshire Highways has approved the transport plan, they have raised concern about the safety of the design, traffic data collected, and how this data was analysed. Indeed, they had asked that the applicant reconsiders the methodology used for calculating the associated with the development because it was old and out of date. They queried the traffic data and how and where it was collected, adding that they may require further monitoring at additional sites. However, none of this extra information was provided before the plan and designs were approved. Given that this information had specifically been sought prior to approval, it is a significant procedural irregularity that approval was granted with old, out-of-date, and incomplete data analysed with an inappropriate method. As a further result of these deficiencies, legitimate Section 106 funding requests, which would be a fraction of the cost of the preparation of some of these reports, for traffic calming measures have been refused to be considered by the planning officer. There are legitimate environmental concerns about contraventions of the local plan as well. The presence of badger sets, including breeding sets, have been confirmed, and although barn owls were not recorded on the bird surveys, given the usual habits of barn owls in relation to the size of the site and the monitoring hours and location, it would have been impossible to observe them. They would invite a monitoring exercise at an appropriate time to observe them in flight, as witnessed by the locals on a regular basis. In short, this development does not support the existing SEA, it does not cater for any local need within the SEA, it would seriously undermine other employment areas, including priority town centres for office space, it contravenes several policies in the most up-to-date local policies as well as pre-existing policies. The recommendation for approval by the planning officer, which admits these contraventions, is based on a serious miscalculation of the risks and benefits of this development as a result of inaccurate, out-of-date data and contravention of so many policies adopted in the last 6 months.
3 minutes, Chair.
This type of development is an affront.
Can you finish, please? Okay, I'm sorry to cut you dead short, but your time is up there. But thank you for your contribution. Next is Mr. Barrett from Brixworth, please. Parish Council.
Good evening, Chairman and Councillors. I'm Ian Barrett, representing Brixworth Parish Council this evening. I'm hoping that you will agree to oppose this application. Here's a brief overview of some of the reasons. We know development in urban countryside is tightly controlled. The Joint Core Strategy says so, the Brixworth Neighbourhood Plan says that, and the Council's Part 2 policy says that. This proposal is indeed outside the village confines. But would it contribute to the local economy, as it must, to jump outside that boundary? To bring jobs? Yeah, but the neighbourhood plan says the village's largest present employer has about 600 employees and 60 come from the village area. Why should the proportion in this application be any different? If these workers aren't local, how are they going to get there? Oh yeah, the 600 or so car parking spaces, I suppose. And getting the extra bus stops, but we're thought to keep the ones we've got. So much for sustainability, in my opinion, or any realistic opinion and benefit rather in local jobs. There's certainly a mismatch, I think, between the proposed size and any demonstrated local need. So where are the local businesses for a large development like this coming from? The applicant found 4 from the SEA who showed a bit of initial interest. Now that's down to 2 already. And that's with a huge range of possible uses in the B category. And if the suggested conditions are accepted, there's only a 6-month slot to find village businesses willing to move in before it's opened up to the county. And then the world and his wife or husband, hardly local. hardly sustainable, I would say. These are not the exceptional circumstances that would allow development outside the village confines. It looks to us like a speculative application, not identifying or meeting any real local need. That's what concerns us. And we say there's no exceptional reason to build outside the village confines. It's true the area is close to the Brixworth strategic employment area, not in, but close. Part 2 policy says it can expand if necessary to support the role and function of the SEA. Where is the applicant's compelling evidence that it will support the existing SEA? I can't find it. Or apart from the 2 firms who might want to move there. What fills the rest of the huge area? The case, in my view, has not been made out to expand or support the SEA. I see no convincing evidence of either local need nor local industry queuing up to move in. This is an outline application. Like a horse race, there are other fences for the applicant to jump after this one before the development can be built. But I think this applicant's horse has fallen at the first. Don't let it have another go. Support your communities in Brixworth and the nearby villages, councillors, and please reject this speculative application.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barrett. Now we go to Mr. O'Leary, Scaldwell Parish Council.
Hello, I'm the chairman for Scaldwell Parish Council, and we wish to object to the proposed application for a number of reasons. The application goes against a number of planning policies which are not outdated, and indeed certain of which were only agreed at the start of this year. In order to override policy, there should be a proven and evidence need, and in this instance, this is not the case. The developer has attempted to demonstrate that the employment area within Brixworth is at capacity, and without this development, businesses will be forced to relocate elsewhere. The developer has included advice from a local agent which quotes interest from 4 companies stated as known to the agent who have expressed an interest should the development progress. We understand 2 of these companies have already located to alternative premises, and irrespective of this, the interest expressed demonstrates no firm commitment to the proposed development. Properties are currently available to let within the business and industrial areas of Brixworth, and facilities are also available at Moulton Park and Cranley Park, both of which are located within 9 miles of Brixworth. Not a single unit at Cranley Park has been let or purchased since they were complete in spring of last year. There remain many units of varying size and nature available, similar to those proposed for purchase or let at Moulton Park, which is only 6 miles from Brixworth. There is therefore no proven need for this development as an extension to the current Brixworth business district, and no requirement to deviate from the planning policy incepted to protect the green belt and open countryside, which this development seeks to destroy. The development will not be occupied by local Brixworth-based businesses as estimated, but by businesses attracted from elsewhere. This will result in a significant volume of increased traffic, as more than 600 private vehicle spaces are occupied on a daily basis. Traffic assessment included within the report deems the impact of the development as minimal. However, how can the introduction of more than 600 traffic movements be dismissed in this way? The assumption suggests that traffic will enter the development via the A508 and will not impact surrounding villages. In reality, villages in close proximity, for example, Scaldwell, are likely to be severely tested, and in travelling from outside of the area, the impact upon the environment of increased traffic movements will be a negative one. The information contained within the traffic assessment is out of date and is not sufficiently detailed to consider the detrimental impact the development will have upon the conservation villages in close proximity. Whilst we urge that the application is refused, should it even be considered for approval, we would urge the S106 obligations are placed upon the developer to take measures to ensure that the safety of the residents within villages such as Scaldwell is properly considered. We would finally state that the proposed development seeks to destroy a wildlife habitat and ecology of note, and developing the green belt in this manner against national planning policy, the character of the area and wildlife habitat will be destroyed forever. The residents of Scaldwell recognise the requirement for progression and development and do not stand in the way of quality considered schemes, whilst developments of a similar nature in close proximity, however, remain empty and under
3 minutes, Chair,
and no real need for this development.
Can you please finish?
We object strongly to the proposal.
Thank you, sir. And the last speaker is Mr. Harley, who's the agent.
Thank you, Chair. This proposed extension of the Brixworth Strategic Employment Area responds to a number of local and national issues and objectives and would deliver a range of benefits. Your recently adopted planning policies provide a clear and explicit context to approve this extension, and the officer's report explains those in detail. I just intend to make a few key points. There are no outstanding objections from any statutory technical consultee, such as highways, the local flood authority, or from landscape or conservation officers at the council. This site is in an area of low landscape sensitivity and would not have significant adverse effects on sensitive views or heritage assets. This is controlled by the parameters plan, which you've seen, which restricts building heights and retains and enhances on-site and perimeter landscaping. The site has no direct residential neighbours and would not harm local amenity. The proposed new roundabout on the A508 has been welcomed by the Highways Authority, and the proposals will help reduce peak hour congestion issues on Scoldwell Road. The severe shortage of small and medium-sized employment sites and premises across the district is well documented, including by the council's evidence base. This shortage is a constraint on sustainable growth of the local economy and is so severe that SEMLEP, the Local Enterprise Partnership, has proposed direct public sector intervention to help develop such sites and premises. The need to respond positively and proactively to this shortage has been brought into sharp relief in recent months by the significant challenges facing the local, UK and global economies as a result of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Across the UK, local authorities and LEPs are seeking positive and proactive ways to respond to these economic challenges and to both protect local areas from the worst effects of the current economic conditions, but also to plan for and enable wider recovery and growth. We have been engaging actively with local employers for some time. Local demand is high, and the proposals would deliver much needed space for expansion and investment. The employment area is highly successful and contains a range of businesses in a variety of building types and sizes, providing jobs in a number of high-value priority growth sectors, including household names in high-tech and automotive sectors. This site will not be delivered speculatively, but in response to occupier needs and requirements. Some occupiers have been able to express their needs publicly, others not at this early stage, and they remain confidential and ongoing. So in summary, this is a response to national and local issues, policies and business needs. The proposals accord with local economic priorities and those of government departments with regard to short and longer term investment priorities, including supporting national growth and high-tech sectors. The proposals meet the criteria set by the Council's new planning policies. We have agreed amendments to the proposals and draft conditions to ensure a range of unit sizes would be delivered, targeted at key employment uses of direct relevance to existing locally based employers, including in high-tech and high-growth sectors, and would help deliver a continued local economic resilience and success. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Right, we have two local members. I don't know whether you've tossed a coin to see which one's going first, but I'll suggest that Councillor Harris goes first. Councillor Harris.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I would like to add some comments to the information that's already been provided from the parishes and from residents. I hope not to repeat the issues that have been raised, but it is clear in my view, from what we've heard, that we have clear contradictions of policy. So I'm not really going to cover that ground again, but I echo the comment about contradiction to our existing policies. I want to focus on maybe some of the more macro issues here. We are on the verge of probably the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression due to two major factors. One is the pandemic. The other one is Brexit, of which we still don't really know what the impact of that will be, because no one seems to be doing a full impact assessment of that. The Council Commission report that's referred to, and I think the agent referred to, in the document and in the notes, was actually composed, I believe, in 2017. We are in a very different world to 2017. 3 years ago is very substantially different to the times that we're in now. So I don't think we should be referring to a document of that age in this particular instance. Businesses are downsizing. Working patterns are changing, with many more of us getting used to home working, actually more so now more than ever. Some organisations, if you take the example of Siemens, a global electronics company with 140,000 employees, have in fact told their employees to stay at home. They don't need to go back to work in office terms ever. I suspect we're going to see a great pattern of people following that route, doing more and more. not just now or foreseeable future, but potentially permanently for the long term. It seems to me that concreting over 360,000 square feet of the countryside on what does appear to be a speculative development does not seem to be the answer facing us in terms of economic challenges. It's certainly not sustainable. We of course all hope that the economic situation does not sustain and improves. However, it would be wiser, I believe, to make such decisions on such planning applications as this once we are in light of that fuller information. Once we're aware that we know that once planning goes through, a simple access road is sufficient to secure that planning for the future. As identified by one of the submissions, there does appear to be plenty of empty space available within close proximities, 5 to 10 miles of this location. They're empty. That suggests to me that demand is not there. The report mentions also Mabbott's Woodyard, which is at the other end of the village of Brixworth. This had also planning agreed in 2013, actually for a mix of housing and for some for outlets in terms of industrial use. Nothing has happened to that site since 2013, other than the demolition of the existing buildings. Since then, nothing. So I echo again, there's clear evidence in my view that this is speculative. I don't hold with the view that of the theory of build it and they will come, certainly not in the current economic conditions. There are no clear benefits economically for the village. And in fact, if planning were granted for this, I suspect it would provide more drains, more of a drain on the resources of the village rather than add anything to it economically. The transport assessment suggests that this is a modest development. I don't personally classify 360,000 square feet as modest. It's 2/3 the size of Mercedes-Benz, which is already at the edge of that site. And if 600 people were employed here, again, that's entirely speculative, then traffic flows would of course increase considerably, both to the north of the village through Madewell, which already has challenges with speeding traffic, and to the south through Kingsthorpe, which is a well-known bottleneck for traffic. That means traffic will be pushed to the east and west of this development. It will therefore go through existing, I hate to call them rat runs, but they are well-known rat runs. That will add to traffic through existing villages. You only need to witness the exodus of 800 people from Mercedes-Benz at the end of the day to realise how this works in practical terms. The traffic assessment, in my view, is therefore flawed, as it appears to suggest that all traffic will use the 508. Even if this were the case, the traffic survey in September last year on the Brixworth bypass counted 65,000 vehicle movements during 1 week. I also have grave concerns about the environment and air quality, adding even more to this. I just want to mention also briefly a couple of other points. The skyline is referred to in the report on a number of occasions. There's no doubt that this will affect the skyline and views from villages in the surrounding areas. We are rapidly approaching a point, if this development goes ahead, of hunting the spire of the Saxon Church, which is a well-known existing important Grade 1 listed building. Those views are protected and they should continue to be protected. From an infrastructure point of view, all of the wastewater from the areas described in the industrial context at the top of the village flows down through largely the Victorian sewage system in the conservation area of the village to the sewage treatment work at the bottom of the village near the Brampton Valley Way. This system is frequently overloaded, and there's reference to this by Anglia Water in the report, and has actually in the past created many problems for residents. More drainage water would most likely compound this problem, whether foul water or simply fresh rainwater draining away. So in conclusion, you will have gathered, I can't support this application. It contravenes a great number of policies. Its mass and scale are way too big. It's entirely speculative in nature and doesn't clearly demonstrate economic benefits to Brixworth, Scaldwell, or other surrounding villages. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parker.
Yes, thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank the parishes of Brixworth, Spratton, Scaldwell, Lamport, Hanging Houghton, Old, along with the Brixworth Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group, Atchison, Rafferty, the Green Party and CPRE Northampton, plus residents who have written in giving their strong objections to this application. The Settlements and Countryside Part 2 can now be given full weight, and I would draw your attention to page 42 of the report, where it says, the inspector's report for the Part 2 local plan, January 2020, made the following observations. The plan, as submitted, failed to provide an effective response to the evidence in EC03, which is the Employment Land Study, own emphasis, of the need to enhance the range and choice of units available for businesses. This particularly relates to locations outside Daventry town, such as Crick and Brixworth, where potential unmet demand in the planned period has been identified, but there is insufficient certainty of the extent of such requirements so as to justify specific allocations in the plan. The inspector therefore did not give any allocations to this. Therefore, para 7210 clearly states, if further capacity is required outside the strategic employment area, proposals will be expected to be justified by clear evidence. It is interesting to note that work is to commence in the next 2 weeks in the transforming of the Knoll into a 50,000 square foot floor space. Daventry is a strategic employment area. The clear evidence the officer is relying upon on page 15 is letters from 4 local businesses expressing an interest. They must meet an identified local need, which in the case of Brixworth is high-end engineering. The 4 letters were from BioMio, makers of nappies, Mulberry Developments, development commercial sector, Bricks Secure, alarm installers, and the PCCS Group, which are a software provider. So none of these mentioned relate to high-end engineering. The officer states on page 23 that Bambo Mio and Mulberry Developments have already found premises elsewhere. So now we are down to 2 letters of interest. Bricks Secure have recently applied for planning permission to extend their current premises. So I suspect we're down to 1. PCCS Group moved from Northampton, where they were resident for 25 years, to premises which were new, made by Mercedes in 2017. Therefore, there is clear evidence that this development does not meet EC4D and goes against the Part 2 local plan which the inspector has endorsed. The applicant refers to other companies, but again, no evidence has been submitted, which they must do as stated in the Part 2 plan. This development is purely speculative and does not account to the following policies. The application does not demonstrate a local need and therefore is against the Part 2 plan. It is also against the Part 2 plan with reference to policies RA1, development of the primary service village will be located within the confines of the village. This proposal is outside the confines of the village. RA1C, be of an appropriate scale relative to its role as a primary service village. This application is for 360,000 square feet of units with 677 car parking spaces. I doubt anyone could say that is of appropriate scale. It's also against RA6 and EC4D. It is against policies from the West Northants Joint Core Strategy, namely R2, due to the scale of the proposal, S1, Greenfield site in open countryside. Both of these support the Part 2 plan. It is also against policy 2 of Brixworth Neighbourhood Plan. I can see no reason why we would go against all of these policies and I propose refusal of officer's advice. This is a proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And your reasons are they the ones you've just stated?
They are, Chair.
Right. Do you have a seconder? I can see a French lady's hand. Councillor Irving Swift, do you second the proposal?
I do second, and I am also the county councillor for Brixworth, and a lot of the villages around have sent me their query, and they were very worried. Also, I think we are a bit mischievous here because we say it has no impact. I will remind everybody that in Brixworth, we have one of the most ancient churches in the whole of England, the Saxon Church. And it's already very minimal, the approach, because of all what we have done around it. But it's one of our most important churches. It's beautiful. And to say that that development will not have an impact on the church, even if it's just the way it looks, and a Brixworth, a Mercedes has been a huge success, but you can see the chimney from miles away. And I think to change the landscape even more would be so detrimental for the benefit of all Brixworth. And to add another roundabout, Poor Brixworth will have two roundabouts on the A508, and I will support what Councillor Harris and Councillor Parker have said. The A508 with later on Madewell, the A14, and also Lamport. Lamport have seen a huge increase in the on their high street, which also has a wonderful church and an historical house. And now they are very concerned about all the lorries that go via their high street. So I will support of what he said, and I will second Councillor Parker. And also I remind people that Brixworth has spent a lot of time with a neighbourhood plan, and that is just going to demoralize everybody who has ever been involved on the neighbourhood plan. So the neighbourhood plan said it quite clearly, and I will go with Councillor Parker. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Irving Swift. Tony, indications of people that wish to speak?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Wesley and then Councillor Smith.
Okay, we'll go to those two first then. Councillor Wesley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, pretty much. I think we should be listening to the local people here. I know what's what, and I don't think they're being silly. We have. It's easy to say, oh yeah, build industrial units because it's employment and we've got to have employment. Times are changing. It's not just about that, is it? We have policy in this council. We have planning policy and we have policies on development. And you know, this, for me, this just cuts right across it. And if we're going to go to the trouble of having policies, what is the point of chucking them out the window at the first opportunity because it looks a little bit nice that there's an industrial estate with the possibility of employment? I know people want jobs. I know that is important, but so is the countryside. So is people's quality of life, and all the nonsense. You just know that traffic's going to be affected. You know the views are going to be affected, and I agree with everything everyone else says, and I'm not going to say any more. But it's an abomination.
Thank you, Councillor Wesley. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with everything that's been said so far. I mean, this is clearly a speculative development. It's published as Brixworth Technology Park. If you do a search on Google, and it goes to say the expansion of Brixworth Technology Park provides an exceptional opportunity for delivery of an ambition to become a centre of excellence. We have a centre of excellence over in Silverstone already for motorsport, and there's obviously a huge concentration there. This is purely speculative. I'm with Councillor Harris and Parker on this one.
Thank you. Tony, any more speakers?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor James.
Councillor James, you next. You're muted. You're still muted. That's it.
I've listened to both sides of the argument, and I have to say this, that I agree with every point that Steve Harley brought into the debate. This is much needed development. The word in the real estate world is that there is a demand for units of this particular size in this area, Daventry district. Now, as far as the plans go, there is some flexibility here for extending this particular strategic employment area, and it would bring valuable jobs and, more than that, construction activity too, which we're going to need over this next coming year or two of difficult times. Now, people have said that this is a speculative development. May I say this as someone who spent a lifetime in real estate, that all property development is speculative. It's speculative up until the point when a prospective lessee signs a lease, and it's speculative until that person actually continues to be in business and paying the rent under that lease. This idea that somebody is prepared to invest millions in a particular development purely on a whim, as though it was building a house somewhere and, oh, we can easily find someone for that, is absolute nonsense. They must be convinced that there's a need for this. They did have 3 or 4 people. That has probably drifted away to 1. But then, of course, this development hasn't got planning permission yet. It is speculative from that point of view, but I've no doubt that it will meet a demand that's there. And of course, it will provide work nearer to people's homes. One of the things, and it's much needed in the case of Northampton, is to stop all this crisscrossing and getting round Northampton with queue after queue. You try getting past Bracknells on any weekday morning. It's almost impossible and dangerous too. So, and the point about Brexit, I take that as something which is totally irrelevant, because the proponents of, or rather those that are anti-Brexit, have always made up little stories about this, that, and that isn't proven, that isn't proven. It isn't proven that we're going to survive until tomorrow. But nevertheless, we are living in a service economy. Post-Brexit, this will still be a service economy, with one difference. There will be an increase in other activity, notably in the manufacturing sector at the high end of manufacturing. And I think this will fulfill a great demand. There are limitations on the size of the units, the number of units, the total overall space available. So it can be controlled from that point of view to ensure that the aims and objectives are actually met and accord with the officer's report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor James. Any more speakers, Tony?
Yes, Chairman, Councillor Longley, and then Councillor Irving Swift and Councillor Jonathan Harris.
Swift, Jonathan Harris. Right. If anybody else does wish to speak, if they could tell Tony, because we're getting to the vote pretty soon. Councillor Longley.
Thank you, Chair. Well, there won't be many people that will have as much knowledge of that site as I have, because my offices have been opposite. In fact, will be seriously affected by it. And we've been there for about 20 years or something like that, maybe even more, I can't remember exactly. And my view is that the reason people go to Brixworth, the reason people will fill that site, in my opinion, is its location. We've got interests in Moulton Park as well, and given the choice, people will go to somewhere like that before they go to Moulton Park, because, of course, Brixworth is north, it's out of the town, and it's a very desirable location with the A14 not far away. So as far as the economics goes, not that that's our worry, I don't see a problem with that. And I've got a bit of knowledge of that, so I would doubt I'm wrong. Now, the one thing I think we should be doing, I think we should be encouraging development. I think these, is it Steve Harley, was his name? I think Steve Harley made a very good presentation, and I thought Councillor David James, as usual, did as well. So I'm in support of this, because I think it's the sort of thing we should be doing going into the economic downturn that we likely are. And I think we've got a responsibility to support the economics of Northamptonshire and not put a damp cloth on it. I'm actually quite surprised at the parish councils, how many of them are so clearly very opposed to it. And I would have thought the economic requirement and the jobs would outweigh that. Bearing in mind, you know, I have an interest in the situation because I'm opposite there. I would still say I would still put that case to you. And also the fact of small units. I mean, there was, I think it was Daventry Council themselves put a report together 2 or 3 years ago saying that in fact there was a high need for smaller units. And our experience has been that people are downsizing. That has actually happened, but they're downsizing to smaller units. So as I say, I think it's the sort of thing that we should be encouraging. It's always a shame when we build on something green. I take that, and I take the arguments for that. And I think that our planning authority, our planning officers here, I mean, they've kicked this around, they've agonized over it, and I think they've come down on the side of economics. So I will be supporting the officers tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. Councillor Irving-Swift.
Yes, I feel that two councillors who, or one, who live far away, the people of Brixworth have seen such a change in the last 20 years. And if we are not careful, because that is what also is important, Brixworth is not far away from Northampton. And at the moment, we are discussing about the Northampton orbital and so on. So I think it is premature. The villages around Brixworth are not opposite to progress, but they are pretty good people, and all the parishes, the chairman, they are not opposed because they are opposed progress or they don't want to see. But when they see something that is so big and with the outside of the policies, it's ring alarm bell. So I think to tell us that we had dearth, and normally when something is so big and it's outside of the plan, let's central government decide and not us, because you know what the population around Brixworth has decided, and they have spent months, years to fight so many development and to agree on some. And I find to go against the neighborhood plan is really very, very sad. And somebody who has not been involved in the neighborhood plan, somebody who doesn't know Brixworth that well, to tell that that is what Brixworth need, I think it's mark of genuine interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Irving-Swift. Right, Councillor Harris.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments. I'm not sure that word in the real estate world gives us sufficient evidence of demand for such a scale of development. So I would rather actually see factual information rather than just technically what might be described as word on the street. Most of us aren't in that real estate world, and therefore we have no idea of that. I'll let the Brexit comment go. I'm not surprised at it, but time will tell, Councillor James. And the final comment I want to make, near people's homes, that's speculative also. There's absolutely no evidence that people who would operate on a site such as this, if it is given permission, would live locally. There's absolutely no evidence of that. In fact, if you look at the Mercedes-Benz traffic and count the Mercedes-Benz cars that travel in and out and through and around the villages, it's quite considerable. Quite a lot of those people don't actually live in the village. Some do, yes, but some don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more speakers? Tony?
Chairman, Councillor Frost.
Councillor Frost. Right, after Councillor Frost then, unless something is very, very urgent, I'm going to go to the vote. So, Councillor Frost.
Thank you, Chairman. I sometimes have a problem with my microphone. Can you just confirm you can hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Brilliant, thank you. My question is for Keith Thursfield, and it's around some of the technical points made by the parish councils. my question is, I can see how, as Annalise says, it could be argued that it's compatible with policy EC4 of the local plan. But my question is, does he agree with the points made by the parish councils that the proposal is contrary to RA6 open countryside and that it does not meet the criteria to be supported, that it's contrary to RA1 because it's outside the confines of the village and does not meet the criteria to be supported, contrary to R1 of the West Northants Joint Core Strategy, as Councillor Harris said, at 2/3 of the Mercedes site, it hardly seems an appropriate scale for such a rural area. Does he agree that it's contrary to West Northants Core Strategy Policy R2 and that it doesn't meet any local need and contradicts the countryside protection policies of the MPPF? And finally, is it right that it's contrary to the Brixworth neighbourhood plan? Because if one box is ticked and at least 5 boxes are crossed, I'm trying to see how, when you weigh up the pros and the cons, how any reasonable person can see that it's a good application to be agreed. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go to Keith to answer that, when I say I'll go to the vote next, I shall go back to the proposer to sum up anything you might want to sum up, then to the vote. So it'll be Keith to answer those questions, then it'll be back to Councillor Parker, and then it'll be the vote. Okay. So Keith, can you answer those questions?
I think it's a bit of an unfair question, to be fair, Chairman, because obviously the report stands as a whole, and it's quite recognised in the report that it is contrary to some of the older policies, but also some of the older policies have been superseded by the newer policies, and you have to have regard to the newest policies. As it says in the planning policy section, it's set out there, but obviously the latest policy is the one that carries the most weight. And some of the policies do refer to exceptions under EC4. Now, that's clearly a subjective judgment, I suppose, that our policy colleagues have said they felt that it met the exception allowed for under EC4, but obviously members are taking a different view, which they're perfectly entitled to do in that sense. So yes, it is contrary to some of the older policies, and you might take a view that it doesn't meet policy EC4 criteria either. So yeah, in that sense, yes, I accept it is contrary to some older policies, but not necessarily the newer ones. But that's a decision that we can differ on.
Thank you, Keith. Right, now back to Councillor Parker to sum up before we go to the vote. Councillor Parker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, some interesting comments. I think in all of these things, as one of the councillors, I think it was Councillor Wesley, pointed out, if you've got policies, you have to adhere to them. There's no point just sort of selecting and be selective on what you want to use and not use, and then throw other things in which have absolutely got nothing to do with the application. You have to look at the policies. And it's quite clear with the Part 2 plan, which is the latest one, and I don't want to sort of keep saying the same things, but the inspector found no reasons to allocate further land. And you have to show clear evidence that there is a need. There isn't a need because of the 4 people who've shown an interest, i.e. we might go there, we're down to 1. So there's not the clear evidence to go forward. So we have to stand by the policies. And Councillor Frost asked about certain policies, and the answer is yes, it is against them, because that's what I've said, and I've extracted that from all the policy documents. So I see no reason why we should accept this proposal. And it is purely speculative, because there isn't anyone who's actually said we are going to move. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Right then, we have a proposal that the application be refused, which has been seconded. So Catherine now will go through round a roll call of all councillors. So if you support the proposal, you'll be supporting refusal. If you're against the proposal, you'll be accepting. You'll be not accepting refusal. Sorry, Councillor Irving Swiss, is it quick?
Very quick. I think it might be useful if for all the members we have the reason for refusal. We told.
We
I think it might be useful.
No, I think it was so long that Councillor Parker did string it out quite a long way. I don't think we want to hear all the reasons again. I think
no, but I think it's important for our officer. Sometimes they said, well, we will go on for, you know, if they have to defend an appeal, Keith Thirdfield might decide that we might go with one or less reasons.
Well, the proposal was a significant number.
Yeah.
Keith, you are aware of the numbers he's given that have been given out, aren't you?
Yeah, yes, Chairman. I'm happy with the proposal. Yeah.
Okay. As he's happy, Councillor Ravenscliffe will go to the vote. Over to you, Catherine, to do the roll call.
Thank you. Councillors, if you could indicate whether you are for, against or abstaining when I call your name. Alan Chantler.
Against.
Stephen Dabbs.
For.
Rupert Frost.
For.
Jonathan Harris.
For refusal.
Cecile Irving-Swift.
For.
David James.
You're muted.
Against.
Malcolm Longley.
Against.
Peter Matton.
For.
Kevin Parker.
For.
Ken Ritchie.
For.
Ian Robertson.
Against.
David Smith.
For.
Mark Wesley.
For.
Steve Osborne.
I don't normally vote unless
Okay.
it's a casting vote on my ward.
Okay, thank you.
And the result is?
I'm for.
9 for and 4 against.
Right, the application is refused for the given reasons. We move on. The next application is in Daventry, 0046. Over to you, Eamon.
Thanks, Chairman. Hopefully you're all seeing the slides. Yes?
Yeah.
Property, or the subject property, sits in the centre of the town. Fairly prominent building at the top of Sheaf Street, opposite the post office. Site lies within the conservation area, the town centre conservation area. That's it there. And I'll just go to the photographs, because it's nice to look at a couple of photographs, isn't it? Prominent building. Proposal involves the conversion of an upper story room to a flat. It's actually on the rear elevation, so it's actually not visible from any public part of the conservation area. And any changes to the building itself would be imperceptible, with the exception of, I'll just go back to the drawings. A bin store that will be provided in the courtyard area to the rear of the building, just in this location, which is currently used for the storage of bins. And then internally, there is a provision for cycle storage. You'll note from the report that the town council are objecting due to loss of parking spaces or the lack of any parking provision to serve the single unit. In our view, whilst we note those concerns, we consider that the fact that this is a town centre use and a town centre proposal with a residential unit with alternative choices for alternative transport, that it's in effect a sustainable location, and as such, we couldn't warrant a refusal of the application based solely on the parking issue. And accordingly, we're recommending that the application be approved, Chairman.
Thank you, Eamon. We have speakers on this one. First speaker is Mrs. Randall, who's speaking on behalf of the Town Council.
Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak. Yes, I'll be very brief. We have had numerous applications for houses of multiple occupancy, etc. Or even though we're told it's a town centre building and people won't use cars, I do a night shift, and when I finish at 6 o'clock in the morning, every car park has got at least half a dozen or more car parks parked in it. I know that people can get a parking permit, but that doesn't really help the lack of parking that we've got within the town. So we're not against, obviously, the flat it being brought back into use, because we understand that there is a need. It is solely the parking that we have concerns about, and we have concerns about that for every application that comes in. So that's all I'd like to say. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Randall. Ms. Morritt, agent.
Yeah, so as we've discussed, the proposal comprises the change of use of part of the first floor to one residential unit, to confirm that the proposal doesn't result in any loss of car parking spaces, and a car-free scheme is proposed. We consider this acceptable as the site is within Daventry Town Centre, and it has several local facilities and services.
Could you hold on a second, please? Is anybody experiencing difficulty hearing this lady besides me? Right. Perhaps it's you sound as if you're a long way from your microphone and you're very echoey. So can you try again? You can start again with your 3 minutes. Try again.
Bear with me, sorry, is that better?
A little better. Try again.
Any better now?
Yes. Yes,
Perfect.
that's
Okay,
better.
I'll sit right up. Yeah, so as I said, a car-free scheme is proposed, and we think this is considered acceptable as the site is within Daventry Town Centre, and it has several local facilities and services that would meet the day-to-day needs of the residents of the unit. And the bus station is a 3-minute walk away. We know that NCC Highways did not object to the lack of dedicated parking, so they recognise the site's single location. And the proposal includes 4 cycle parking spaces, which will encourage cycling by the occupants of the new dwelling. Therefore, we don't anticipate that the residents of the unit will actually need to own a car. However, we do recognise the concerns of the Town Council, and in response, we note that there are off-road spaces in Foundry Court, and there is sufficient parking capacity in several car parks nearby. Daventry Council advertise on their website that there are 15 public car parks in Daventry Town Centre, providing over 1,500 spaces, with varying time limits for free parking, all of which are within walking distance from the site. Lodge Road, Golden Close and Chapel Lane provide parking all day, and the short stay car parks will meet the needs of the visitors of the town centre for shopping and leisure purposes. The proposal accords with policy, which promotes development where services and facilities can be easily accessed by walking, cycling or public transport, and those that promote new housing development, which maximises travel choice from non-car modes. As such, we consider planning permission should be granted. Thank you.
Thank you. I lost a part of that time, but it came back on, so I'm all right now. Right, I've got this down as Abbey South and Abbey North, so it must border two areas. So I don't know who wants to go first out of all you councillors that sit on. Let me pick one. Abbey South, right. Abbey North. Councillor Ritchie, you haven't said a lot. You can go first.
Chairman, Councillor Ritchie's muted, but it actually is Abbey South, so it should be Councillor Wesley.
It is Abbey South, is it? Well, it says both on mine. Sorry. Councillor Wesley. Okay, Councillor Wesley, you have a go then.
Thank you. Yeah, we seem to be getting confused quite a lot between Abbey South and Abbey North just recently, but hey ho. I have to say, I do agree with Councillor Randall's point on this, but obviously policy states that that's not an objection we can make. I mean, we can point out that there are difficulties, and I think some of the other developments in town have led to car parking undoubtedly led to car parking issues. But that's just hearsay. It's not part of policy, and I can't object on that basis. Having said that, people do need to live somewhere. Town centres are changing. I don't really want to propose this, but I think I will be supporting it. But listen to what everyone else says. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Right. Does anybody from Abbey North wish to speak on it, or it's got both down, but it's just Abbey South really. Anyway, members. First of all, I'll go to Tony. Tony, is there a queue?
Yeah, Councillor James and Councillor Ritchie.
Councillor James, then Ritchie. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'm willing to propose that we go with officers' advice on this one. I think it's a clear-cut case there are no reasonable grounds for refusing the application. So I'm quite happy to propose that we go with officer's advice and approve it.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? I can see a hand waving below you. Must be Councillor Chandler. Yes. Councillor Chandler, you wish to speak? No, you don't wish to speak. Okay, I got the message. Right, Councillor, we have a seconder in Councillor Chandler and Councillor Ritchie to speak next.
If Councillor Chandler hadn't done it, I think I would have been happy to support this. I was originally going to ask, on page 71, it says that the DDC ward councillor has got no comments. Can I ask in reports, if there's a statement like that, there are 3 ward councillors, and clearly, given that the Councillor Wesley has had a say, not all of them didn't have comments, and I just feel it would be nice to know what it referred to. However, I am really with Councillor Wesley in this. Some time ago, he and I were a task panel on parking in the town, not necessarily in the town centre. And I think I would generally support everything that the town council does to make sure that proposals that don't have parking, if not rejected, are at least very, very thoroughly questioned. But in this case, given where this property is, you know, above a shop, in the middle of the town centre, we have had sort of government initiatives over recent years trying to reuse accommodation that's available above shops. Very often the sort of accommodation that is going to be there for people who are perhaps living on their own, perhaps people who are having their first accommodation that they can afford. And I just think it's right that we try to offer more of that sort of accommodation within Daventry. There are plenty of other flats around the centre of Daventry that don't have parking. I don't know where people park, if they're in any of these flats that are up above at the end of Bowen Square and so on. But you know, it doesn't make this unique. And I feel that even if this accommodation was going to be used for some business purpose, then there need to be parking that was associated with the business. So while I think it's unfortunate that there is not parking that goes with it, I just don't see that that is sufficient of an objection not to allow this to go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Any more speakers, Tony?
None indicated, Chairman.
Right, if there's none indicated, we have a proposal the application be approved, which has been seconded. All those in favour, Catherine will do the roll call. So you're either in favour of the application being approved or not. Catherine, over to you.
Councillor Chandler.
For.
Councillor Dabbs.
For.
Councillor Frost.
For.
Councillor Harris.
For.
Councillor Irving Swift.
For.
Councillor James.
For.
Councillor Longley.
For.
Councillor Matton.
For.
Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Ritchie.
For.
Councillor Robertson.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Wesley.
For.
That's everybody in favour, so that's 13.
So it's unanimous then?
Yes.
Okay, the application is approved then. Now, due to some unforeseen circumstances, I've moved some papers around and I've lost the listing of the next agenda item. I'm sure I can find it within a microsecond. So, I found it. Right, I do apologise for that. The next application is in East Haddon, and it's 0287. Over to you. I think it's Keith. No, it's not Keith. It's
no, it isn't me. It is me, Chairman.
Yeah, it is you.
Yeah. There we go. Hopefully that's going to expand now. Yep. Yeah, this application is a site that was actually at planning committee not that long ago for the same issue, effectively. If you recall, we had this application site before, where the lady that ran the riding establishment had an accident, falling off a horse, and while she was convalescing, she wanted her friends to come along and help out, and other people to come along and help out and exercise the horses. So there were more comings and goings on the site. And you probably remember it from the photographs more than anything. And the concern of the Highway Authority was that the entrance is down here, and obviously there's traffic coming the other way, coming round this bend. And obviously, if people are waiting to turn right or just pulled out of the entrance, they were concerned of potential highway safety. So that was then. This is now, which is a different proposal for 3 glamping pods using the same entrance. So the layout is that, and this just shows you how the proposed pods will be laid out. And obviously the issue remains about the use of the entrance, and the same concern is raised by the Highway Authority, who also mentioned this time round that obviously if people are strangers to the area, they obviously won't be expecting it around the bend. And our view is, having read the traffic assessment that was done, the actual number of extra traffic movements, which would be seasonable one for the glamping, actually works out to be the same 35 extra maximum that it was when the other proposal was being considered. So on that basis that members considered it before with the same additional 35 extra movements a day, and we obviously are aware that you did approve that, we're prepared to recommend approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right? Yeah. Right. There's no local member for actual East Haddon, but it's right on the edge of my parish. So I'm going to say what I think about it as a local member. I don't have a problem with it at all. I go by there at least a dozen times a week. I've never seen a car go in and out there yet. I've always found it an easy entrance to go into, although I am wary of that it is a fast road, or it can be. So I don't have a problem with it at all. But I'm sure, in fact, I'll propose that we go with officer's advice. But I'll call Councillor Longley. He probably knows it better. He used to live there. Councillor Longley?
Yes, I lived there for 24 years, Chair, so I know it extremely well. Yes, you do have to be careful coming out of there, and we debated this, as Keith said, quite at some length the last application. I would support it because it's a fairly small number. If you're be careful, it's not a problem, but of course, but you do have to be careful. The issue to me would be where if anybody knows the area well, it's very undulating, and it's where the pods will be located. And just looking at the map there, you can see where they are, and you certainly won't see them from the road. In fact, you can't even see the house from the road. So it comes down to the judgment on the highways, and I would be very supportive of the officer's advice here tonight.
Thank you. Are you seconding the proposal then, Councillor?
Happy to do that, Chair. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Are there any speakers, Tony?
Yes, Chairman, Councillor Frost and Councillor James.
Councillor Frost first, followed by James.
Thank you. I can't see the point of talking for the sake of it, and I put the electronic hand up before Councillor Longley spoke. So yeah.
Well, it's a local member, so
exactly. Yeah. Let's crack on with the vote. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor James.
Yes, I'm quite happy to support this application. I was watching television the other night, and there was a local farmer, I think it was David Williams, was pointing out the number of people who wanted to camp at East Haddon. And I'm not surprised. It's a delightful village, and it's in a delightful part of the county. So I'm quite happy to support this. I suppose you could say there's a need for it.
Thank you, Councillor James. Funny you should say that name, but David Williams is a neighbour of this particular piece of land. Right, no more speakers. Tony?
Chairman, yeah, Councillor Harris.
Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. Just a brief one, and it may or may not be appropriate. In terms of conditions, is there anything that we can recommend or suggest from a signage point of view that might alleviate the problem in terms of, repetitive signage, for instance? I don't know whether that's something that would fall into something we can recommend. It's a question for Keith, I guess. Thank you.
Keith, any suggestions on that?
Well, I suppose you could recommend some sort of warning sign or whatever, but it'd have to be a proper traffic highway sign, and they come at quite an expensive cost. And obviously, we have to negotiate with the highway authority, which we haven't done, obviously, at this point, because we thought it was okay. It was okay before, and it's okay now, really.
Okay, well, we'll leave it to you. You've heard the comment from a member. If it's possible, do so. If it's not possible, well, we'll see what you can do.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a proposal the application be approved, which has been seconded. Over to you, Catherine, for the roll call.
Indicate whether you're for, against or abstain. Councillor Chandler.
For.
Councillor Dabbs.
For.
Councillor Frost.
For.
Councillor Harris.
For.
Councillor Irving Swift.
For.
Councillor James.
For.
Councillor Longley.
For.
Councillor Matton.
For.
Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Ritchie.
For.
Councillor Robertson.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Wesley.
For.
That's 13 in favour. That's unanimous, Chair.
Oh, times are getting better. Right. Less controversial as we go on. The next application is in Daventry, and it's 0293. Over to you, Eamon.
Thanks, Chairman. Hopefully you can all again see the screen.
Yes, we can.
It's an application that landed 35 Parkleys, Daventry. Site lies not far from the town centre in a sort of well-established residential area comprising primarily semi-detached properties, but also a range of detached properties staggered in sort of funny arrangement to the west side, and a number of single-storey properties as well. The application before members effectively is for the subdivision of an existing plot to create a new plot and a new dwelling detached from the adjoining semi-detached property. In this location here, between the two properties runs a public footpath which allows access from Parkleys to public open space to the south. So this is the main neighbour who's primarily affected, who has a main elevation facing front and rear. Picking up those drawings, there are a number of trees on the site, but this is the proposed dwelling. So from the front, from the street frontage, it will appear as a two-storey dwelling with accommodation in the roof space. From the rear, and you will see this from the public footpath, you've effectively got a 2.5-storey unit, but it does provide adequate amenity space to serve both the existing dwelling, leave sufficient space to serve the existing dwelling, but also sufficient space to serve the proposed dwelling. The relationship between the side property of the proposed dwelling and the nearest neighbour, as the report indicates, comes down to around about 8.9 metres, which is fairly close, but our judgment is that on balance, we would judge this to be acceptable, given that it's primarily a residential area. It provides a new dwelling within the town and sufficient parking to serve both the existing dwelling to the front and to the side. So accordingly, Chairman, we are recommending that the application be approved, but I'm happy to answer any questions or queries members may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Eamon. We have two. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, Chairman.
Yeah, you can hear me, can you? Oh, right. We have two speakers. Joe Wright, who's against the application. You go first.
Good evening. I live at 37 Parkleys. and our objections are for the following reasons. We feel that the 3-bedroom dwelling will provide further noise and traffic to the surrounding neighbourhood. The dwelling construction will be quite destructive to our daily life for quite a long period of time. I work from home full time, and we anticipate with the building work, curb change, the gas and water amendments, an additional family living within such close proximity is thought to lead to a noisy environment and quite stressful with my work. The dwelling will be invasive to our property views, as this is proposed as a storey building. We feel it will be quite close. Construction vehicles and delivery fleet will compromise safe passage near the bend of Park Leys, as this is a narrow road and a blind spot. Parked vehicles will compromise paths and traffic by causing major obstructions. And finally, we bought this house because we liked that it was detached with space, privacy, and not overlooked by neighbours or within a quiet surrounding. With this application, we strongly feel that these reasons we purchased the house will be compromised, and we do not feel this will be a good addition to our mental being and privacy of land. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mrs. Randall, speaking on behalf of the Town Council.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I know this road well, and we've looked at the application. We considered it's not in keeping with the local area. I mean, those houses were built, I don't know, 1950s, I'd imagine, or something like that. And even though you've got a mix of semis and detached houses, they're all very similar design. This is totally out of character with the rest of the surrounding houses. We've got concern that it is on a bend. At the moment, it looks like the parking provision, they park on sideways across from the house. So whether that's to get more vehicles parked on their driveway at present, I don't know. But our concern is that if the parking is pushed out onto the road, you will be parking, on a blind bend. But we just consider it's not in keeping with the street scene. There are a few houses along there that a couple have got a skylight up in the attic, but nothing like what is proposed. It's totally out of keeping. So that's more the reason that our objections were, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Randall. We now go to local members, and I think I've got it right this time. It's Abbey North. So, Councillor Ritchie and Councillor James. Councillor Ritchie, you can go first.
Well, it's nothing to do with Abbey North. This is most decidedly Abbey South.
Oh, well, I do apologise. You're dead right. Oh, wait a minute. No, mine says Abbey North, my paper.
Chairman,
Your paper says Abbey North, but it's not.
Chairman,
it's Abbey South.
Chairman,
okay.
perhaps I can help you with that. It's actually showing as the parish being Abbey North, so it's the Abbey North ward of Daventry Town. It is actually Abbey South as regards the DDC ward.
Right, okay. So we'll go to Abbey South then. Well, we know who Abbey South is. There's only one of you here. Councillor Wesley.
Thank you, Chair. It does get confusing in Daventry with the parish boundaries, but that will obviously change. Yeah, difficult one. As I often say at these meetings, nobody wants a building site next to them. Nobody wants anything built there. I think though on balance, I don't think there's a lot to say about this site. I think it's I don't really see what we could refuse it on, to be perfectly honest. I do take the concerns of the construction times though seriously from the lady that spoke. I'm sorry, I didn't catch her name. I mean, maybe we could put a restriction on site work as well, times, etc. Weekdays, not Sundays, whatever that may be, just to give people a little bit of respite, because it is a little bit of an imposition on people. Yeah, I think I'm probably going to go with opposite advice on this in the brief. Again, I don't really want to propose it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask Eamon. Eamon, will there be times on it restricting it from late at night and Sundays?
Currently, Chairman, there are no such conditions, but if members felt it necessary to impose such a condition to restrict hours of working, then we can give that consideration. I should, however, point out that the government current guidance allows for developers to seek extensions of construction hours during the pandemic, allowing even sort of working beyond those periods specified in conditions. So it's possible, but in imposing conditions, you must decide whether it's proportionate and reasonable given the development that you're allowing. Certainly, we have imposed these types of conditions on much larger scale developments where you got a lot of construction work ongoing. We've tended to avoid them on much smaller scale units, but again, members are entitled to have regard to the concerns of members and local residents and impose conditions they see fit. But the caveat to that is the government expectation is that we should look reasonably to relaxing or not enforcing current conditions on construction hours.
Thank you. Councillor Wesley, did you propose approval of that application or not? No, I didn't think you did. Okay, over to you then, Keith. Who wishes to speak?
I think you're coming to me, Chairman, but it's Councillor Dabbs and then Councillor Ritchie.
Dabbs, then Ritchie. Okay, Councillor Dabbs.
Thank you, Chair. I think I entirely agree with what Councillor Randall and the Town Council views are on this. I hope members have looked at the street scene, which I think is absolutely key here. This is absolutely not in keeping with the street scene. If we look along the road from, it's basically the London Road's end of Parkleys, that you've got what are a number of semi-detached houses, quite spacious it would appear, because you have a semi-detached, a garage, another garage, then another semi-detached. So between the two blocks of houses, there's quite a bit of space. This one is at the end, so obviously there is not another house on the end of it. But what we're proposing here is we take the garage away and put a house in its space. And that'll look totally weird in terms of the street scene. Anybody going past will be thinking, you know, that house has been squeezed in there. What on earth is it doing? You've lost the garage and you've stuffed a house in there. And I think, you know, when we go around the streets and in our towns and villages and so on, you quite often see some sort of building, shall we call it a house, and you think, what on earth is that doing there? How on earth was that allowed? Well, I think that's the case in point here. If we allow this development, okay, it's only one house, that you'll have people going along Parkleys and saying, what on earth is that? Why on earth have we allowed that? So I think in terms of this, it's certainly not in keeping with the street scene. I think from the lack of space between the house or the two houses in comparison to the other semi-detached, I think it's a squeezed in overdevelopment. So I will vote against this one.
Thank you. Councillor, I think you said Councillor Ritchie, didn't you, Tony?
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes,
Councillor Ritchie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My concern isn't so much just the street scene, but the fact that this is shoving a house into a tiny space. A question almost comes up why, but I suspect that the only reason that anybody would ever contemplate building a house here is that they've got a bit of land that they can get planning permission to do something with, and therefore can make quite a killing financially. I just don't see, this doesn't add at all to the, you know, the street scene, the whole ambience of that part of South Daventry. I just think that this is wrong. This is just looking for any opportunity where you can put up a house and and find that you can sell it. Overdevelopment surely must be an argument that comes up here. And surely we need, surely there must be other, other policies we've got that says you can't just go around Daventry looking for places to build and saying, well, that's fine, go ahead, put up a house. It's going to, it will undoubtedly spoil the appearance of Parkleys, but I just think it's so unfair on anybody else living in the area if people are allowed just to build in these tiny plots. I'm against, by the way.
Yeah, I gather that, Councillor Ritchie, but thanks for tipping me. Right, any others, Tony?
Yeah, Councillor James, Chairman.
Councillor James, yes, Councillor James.
Good, Chairman. Well, I agree with what Councillor Wesley said, and I'm sorry that he didn't propose it, but there we are, it leaves it open for me to propose it. I think this property is acceptable in terms of the spacing between the new extension and the existing neighbour. I think it was 9 point some odd metres, which is quite a distance, and it's acceptable in terms of design and materials too. So I think it's very difficult for us to turn it down, particularly as there are other examples in the town area itself, in residential areas, where one or two dwellings have been squeezed in, notably on the headlands, in spaces which, no one would have thought that would have been acceptable, but they have been considered acceptable. So there's a precedent for it. I'm quite sure that they'll be able to put up some sort of adequate screening on the neighbours on their boundary to break down that appearance of a stark wall. So, whilst it isn't something that I would choose if I was in the owner's shoes, nevertheless, I think it's in terms of planning terms, this is acceptable. So I will propose that we go with officer's advice on this application.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you have a seconder? If you do, put a hand in front of you so I can see you.
Councillor Chandler, that's indicating, Chairman.
Right, Councillor Chandler, you wish to speak, sir? A man of little words. Do you wish to speak? I can't see a picture of you for some reason.
He's indicating he doesn't wish to speak, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Tony. Right, does anybody else wish to speak on it? No, nobody else.
Chairman.
Okay, we have a proposal the application be approved, which has been seconded. All those in favour, the roll call to Catherine. Over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Chair. If you could indicate whether you're for, against or wish to abstain. Councillor Chandler.
For.
Councillor Dabbs.
Against.
Councillor Frost.
Against.
Councillor Harris.
Against.
Councillor Irving Swift.
For.
Councillor James.
For.
Councillor Longley.
For.
Councillor Matton.
For.
Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Ritchie.
Against.
Councillor Robertson.
For the development.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Wesley.
For.
And 4 against. That's 8 for and 4 against.
The application is approved. And
Chairman,
if some times can be put on it.
Chairman, I think, can we just double check that? I had it as 9-4.
It's 9-4, sorry, miscounted.
Okay. And going back to Councillor Wesley's point of times being put on it, Eamon, you'll try and include that, won't you?
Yes, please.
Okay. Did you hear that, Eamon?
Well, I wasn't clear whether or not that was form part of the proposition, Chairman, but if that's members' desire, then I will impose the condition.
Yeah, well, when it was proposed about times, a lot of people indicated that they were happy with the times. I didn't word it in the proposition, and perhaps I should have done.
I must have been looking down at my papers, Chairman.
Chairman, I think our legal officer would like to say something.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Through you, the position is that wasn't included in the proposal. If you wish, the application came up and it's been decided without that condition being imposed on it. If you want to bring it back to the table, then you'll need to call for the vote again, because I don't think it was clear that was to be included in the provision of the vote.
Thank you for making it clear to us. Right. Going back to the proposer, who proposed it again? Councillor James. Right. Does your proposal, or are you making a proposal that includes times working or not?
Well, yes, in view of what the neighbour said, I will include that as part of my proposal.
Thank you. Right. Who seconded it?
Councillor Chandler, second.
Councillor Chandler, are you happy to include that in the second in part, Councillor Chandler?
Yes, I am, Chairman.
Right, thank you. So now we will vote again that includes restricting the working times as well as aim and can, which is Sundays and late nights, isn't it, at the moment? Right, over to you, Catherine, for the roll call again.
Sorry, Chairman, can I just for clarification, the normal times are usually weekdays, 7:30 in the mornings through to it's either 5 or 6 in the evenings. Saturdays is normally up to 1 o'clock. No working on Sundays and no working on bank holidays. The caveat, again, Chairman, the caveat to that, as I did indicate earlier, is that government advice allows for developers to seek a relaxation of those times post-pandemic.
Are you all clear and happy with that?
Yes.
Right, Catherine, over to you then for the roll call.
If you could indicate whether you're for, against, or wish to abstain. Councillor Chandler.
For.
Councillor Dabbs.
Against.
Councillor Frost.
Against.
Councillor Harris.
Against.
Councillor Irving Swift.
For.
Councillor James.
For.
Councillor Longley.
For.
Councillor Matton.
For.
Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Ritchie.
Against.
Councillor Robertson.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Wesley.
For.
Thank you. That's the same result as before, 9 for and 4 against.
Thank you, Catherine. And thank you to our solicitor for getting it right. I'd rather have it dead right and not have any complaints afterwards or misunderstandings, let's put it afterwards. So thanks very much for commenting on that. The next application is in Clipston and it's 0299.
Yes, thank you,
Over
Chairman.
to you. Yeah.
Yep, that's one of mine.
It is, Keith.
Hopefully, I'll just. Can you see that?
No.
Oh, I obviously did it wrong. Hang on a sec. Just bear with me a sec.
It's a long way away, Keith Clipston.
I've done it in the. I've clicked on the actual thing rather than the share button. That's better.
Yeah, we're there now.
Yeah, I know what I did. At least I knew how to fix it. Yeah, this is a site that sits sort of between Clipston and Sibbertoft, and the proposal is to convert a building that was built as agricultural PD, that, although suspiciously looks like a house from day one, to a dwelling. You'll see from the planning history, there has been a history of attempts to get a Class Q on that building, which was turned down because it wasn't completed at the time. And more significantly, there was a planning appeal for a new dwelling on the site, which was dealt with back end of last year. And the council's main objection to that appeal was we'd refused permission for the house because there was a building on the site, which in our opinion had been built to look like a house, was perfectly capable of being used as a house. And if the applicant wanted a house on the site, then they should use that building. So that effectively was the view upheld by the planning inspector. So now that's the application that's before us, really, a planning application to convert the building that looked like a house to a house. There were one or two issues raised at the appeal, but they've been dealt with as well, such as it's too big, but we don't think it is too big. In particular, these two sections at the end are actually part of the agricultural enterprise rather than residential. And there's a big chunk of it which is two-storey because that's just a void over the ground floor. So I think I worked out it was just over 200 square metres overall. And we used to have a rule of about 180 for agricultural dwellings, so it's not that far over. So given the history, given what the inspector said, given what the council said, we've now effectively arrived at the situation we wanted. And just to clear up any queries about the justification, we're taking the view there still is a justification for someone to live on the site, because we only had the appeal decision, say 6 months ago at the end of 2019. The inspector was satisfied on that point, and that wasn't really an issue between the parties at the appeal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Keith. It goes to local member who's Councillor Sissy Irving Swift. Over to you, Councillor Irving Swift.
Thank you, Chairman. I think our officer explained very well the situation we are in. I will put back, sorry, my camera. It is unfortunate that we are in that position, and I can understand the parishes Clipston wanted to oppose that. Now we have to go back to the appeal, and the appeal made quite clear that it will see in a light that is not too negative, that if they transform the building as a house, I will not like to recommend it, because for me, that is one of the way when we are all at planning not happy of the way you develop a site and how you get planning permission, but that is what we have in front of us. There is no reason to refuse, but it's a situation that we have more and more in the countryside, and I don't like it, but not liking doesn't make me find a reason. And what I don't like is at the end, when you have the condition, if you look at the condition, because it has to be with condition 8, the occupation of the new dwelling shall be limited to a person solely or mainly working or last working in the locality in agriculture. Well, it can be everybody. So the whole thing is not to my liking, but I don't have any reason for opposing it, but I will not propose it. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith, speakers.
Oh, Tony again.
No speakers.
Oh, sorry. I need to get my Keiths and Tonys right. I'm having a Keith and Tony night. Yeah, okay. Tony's the one with the hair, isn't it? Yeah. Right, yeah. Tony.
Yeah, no speakers indicated. Sorry, Councillor James has just put his hand up, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor James. You're muted. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I mean, this application, listening to what Councillor Irving Swift was saying, we may not like the way we've got to this point, but nevertheless, it is an agricultural workers dwelling with an agricultural condition attached to it. There has been, it's been demonstrated that there is a need for this. So I'm quite happy to propose that we go with officer's advice and approve this application.
Thank you, Councillor James. Do you have a seconder? I can see a hand. Councillor Robertson, I think it is. You wish to say anything, Councillor Robertson?
Not a lot to say. Basically, we're actually stuck with all the legislation regarding agricultural dwellings, and therefore I do second the proposition.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak?
None indicated, Chairman.
Thank you, Tony. Not Keith this time. Right, we have a proposal that the application be approved, which has been seconded. Over to you, Catherine, for the roll call.
Thank you, Chair. If you could indicate whether you're for, against or abstaining. Councillor Chandler?
For.
Councillor Dabbs?
For.
Councillor Frost?
For.
Councillor Harris?
For.
Councillor Irving Swift?
Abstain.
Councillor James?
For.
Councillor Longley?
For.
Councillor Matton?
For. Thank you.
Councillor Parker?
For.
Councillor Ritchie?
Abstain.
Councillor Robertson?
For.
Councillor Smith?
For.
Councillor Wesley?
For.
So there are 11 in favour and 2 abstentions.
Thank you. The application is approved. The next application is in Everton, and it's 0312. Must be used.
Chairman, just before we go into this one, Councillor James has declared an interest and we'll need to leave the meeting for this point. So
Yeah,
we will remove him to the waiting room for the duration of this debate.
Okay.
He's now gone, so you're free to carry on.
Okay, so he can't interrupt or he can't do anything. Okay. Over to you, Eamon.
Thanks, Chairman.
Yeah.
Again, hopefully members will be able to see the slides which are currently sharing.
We can.
Yeah. Again, the property is called Halifax Lodge, Bethel's Lane, Everton, and the application involves the replacement of a conservatory with a single-storey rear extension, side extension, new entrance doors, windows, including changes to size of some openings and rendering to external walls. You'll see from the photographs when we get to it that the application is in fact part retrospective. And I need not remind members that just because an application is retrospective, you must approach this application based on the policies and your observations rather than taking account of the fact that it has come in after the event. So you must focus on judging this application on its planning merits rather than the fact that work commenced without planning permission first being submitted. Just rolling down the location plan, the site sits to the south of the village. It is within the conservation area, but it is a relatively modern dwelling. And basically, the proposal involves the removal of the conservatory to the south and its replacement with a wraparound single-storey extension. There are some other alterations to the exterior in terms of works to the guards, which in their own rights probably wouldn't require planning permission. Probably best if I get to the photographs, but this is the drawing of the property as it currently exists, and this is the property with the alteration. So to the side, this is the front elevation, so to the side, the conservatory goes and is replaced by a single-storey extension. To the rear, the wraparound extension is added in lieu of the conservatory and those rear alterations. And you'll see the various alterations to the windows, etc. This is the property itself, viewed behind existing hedgerow at the frontage of the property. And you'll see that the property has been part rendered. Rendering of dwellings in a conservation area does require the benefit of planning permission. You'll see that the officers have consulted with the conservation officer. And the view taken is the mitigation, although white render is very stark, our view is that can be controlled, and we are proposing a condition in effect to agree the final colour of the rendering to bring that colour, that stark appearance down. In terms of the physical alterations to the building, they are judged to be acceptable and not impacting on the conservation area. And in respect of the renderers have said, we feel that conditions can be imposed to mitigate the impact on the conservation area to bring it to an acceptable level. With that, Chairman, I've got no further question or queries to raise, but I'm happy to answer any questions members may have. I'll just continue scrolling through the photographs. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Eamon. We have two speakers. Mr. Osborne for the Parish Council.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Osborne.
Yes, David Osborne here, Everton Parish Council. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you happen to have the same name as me, funnily enough.
Exactly, yes.
Do you spell it PH or V?
No, mine's exactly spelled the same as yours.
All right.
Yes, good evening, Chairman and committee. When this application appeared before Everton Parish Council, a number of issues and questions were raised and submitted to the case officer. None of these have been satisfactorily answered. The background paper pertaining to this meeting erroneously suggests that the principal area of concern for the Parish Council was the negative impact that the alterations to the property would have on the conservation area. In fact, this was just one of many concerns which we've been outlined and communicated to the local authority. And the communication from the local authority has been poor and apparent lack of action regarding appropriate procedures and enforcement. The property lies within the Everton Conservative area and is therefore subject to the constraints and guidance of the Conservation Area Appraisal Management Plan, which was adopted in October 2019. So why has no application been submitted for the substantial works which have already been carried out? And why have a number of trees been removed where considerable taller trees with thicker trunks than those described in the plans have already been removed from the site? 2 new additional windows have been installed in the south of the property where none existed previously. Why has this been carried out without planning permission? The property has been rendered in this very light colour over a considerable area which was previously brick, thereby significantly changing its appearance. Who gave permission for this colour to be applied? This renovation and refurbishment has dramatically changed the appearance of the property and significantly alters the street scene, particularly the view of the church to the north, which has been specifically highlighted as an important aspect in our conservation plan. Was the appropriate permission given by the Heritage Officer? St Mary's Church is a 14th century Grade 1 listed building, which sits on raised ground within the same vicinity and overlooks the property. The church has been identified as a nationally designated asset in the conservation plan, so deserves major consideration from a visual perspective. Replacement grey UPVC windows have been installed where they were previously brown. There's been significant gaps in the information supplied by the developer and the professional advisors, which leads the Parish Council to question whether correct planning procedures have been followed. The case officer has confirmed in writing that the developers were in breach of planning regulations due to the property being within the conservation area and the amount of unauthorised work which has been carried out on the property, despite being asked to stop work and to submit an application to retrospectively cover this unauthorised work. No such application has been received, so why has this work been permitted?
3 minutes, Chair.
I'm afraid, sir, your 3 minutes is up now.
Yeah, well, if you give permission for this, it will create a precedent and make a mockery of Everton's conservation area appraisal and management.
Okay, thank you, sir. The next speaker is Mr. Dugan, who's the agent. Are you there, Mr. Dugan?
Yes, he's there, Chairman, but he's muted at the moment.
All right, I can't see him. I've got pictures up, you see.
Yeah.
Can people hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Right, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Well, thank you, Chairman, for providing me the time to speak with you today. My name is Sean Duggan. I'm a chartered RBA architect, and I'm speaking in support of the application and to provide some clarity. We've been in discussion with the Council through prior advice processes since the beginning of 2020. The property suffered from decades of neglect, or from ivy, fire, frost, poorly constructed building methods and alterations, and the lack of upkeep over the various years. The work proceeded ahead under established permitted development as a series of alterations and maintenance to the property prior to the conservation came to light. After a series of maintenance efforts from the various damage, the superstructure skin was beyond a position to be restored to a suitable standard. Render was commenced by the builder, as we can see from the photos, to remove a blighted street scene appearance to one of new life and respectful character, echoing those similarly found in evidence. The timing of COVID-19 created a protracted response by both our office and the council in the discovery of the new conservation area boundary line, which now includes Halifax Lodge during the permitted development works, thereby needing conservation area approval. Once both the case officer and I became aware of the new conservation boundary line, the render works had already proceeded. And we then subsequently stopped the render works on site, hence why it remains unfinished with permitted development works continuing, allowing us to then submit for a full planning application in the conservation area as planned. We collaborated further with the case officer to bring the works, alterations, permitted development, and planning works under one application for transparency as planned. So one of these collaborative efforts was to tone down the brightness of the render to be respectful to the church, with the assistance of the conservation and case officer, both of whom in our discussions are pleased with our proposal to use a sympathetic heritage coloured chalk render, which is more of a faint light grey than a bright white that currently rests on site today. Furthermore, we have developed a landscape strategy to improve the existing tall screening with the introduction of new planting to mitigate the view from the church and to resolve the final conservation officer concern. As supported by the case officer's report, there is render elsewhere within the conservation area on numerous projects of various hues and tones, some also within direct view of St Mary's Church and are even in closer proximity than Halifax Lodge. We believe that type of the landscape strategy and the colour proposal can be conditioned to remain in compliance, and these are supported by officers and the conservation officer. This has been communicated in the parish in my discussions too. As I've highlighted in the parish, we are fortunate to have letters of support and consistent positive responses to the project by members of the public passing by. The trees were removed by a certified arboriculturist and tree surgeon to conservation area policies and in the awareness of the case officer to those policies as well. And much to the joy of the neighbour to the north, granting more light to their property, of whom we communicated prior. The rear extension permitted development proposal was just in collaboration with the case officer as well. The case officer has confirmed that proposals are in accordance to policy and has recommended approval subject to conditions. These conditions would seek to maintain the positive—
3 minutes, Chair.
I'll just finish my sentence. Apologies, Chair. These conditions would seek to maintain the positive steps born from the collaboration to mitigate the concerns raised. We respectfully ask the Council to support for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Right, Tony, do we have any indications yet?
No, Chairman, not indicated at the moment.
I'm
right. The local member can't speak because he's declared an interest. So
no. David James isn't the local member.
Chairman, Councillor Smith has indicated.
No, he isn't the local member. So you're dead right. Yes, I do apologise. The local member is Councillor Smith at the moment. Right. Sorry, Councillor Smith.
No, not at all. Okay, now Councillor Amos is also the local member and has been heavily involved in this, and he would like to speak before I do, with your permission.
Sorry, I wasn't aware. He hadn't indicated to speak to me.
Chairman, he is waving, but he hasn't put his blue hand up. But I can confirm he is intending to speak.
Yeah, I must send out an email because you're supposed to tell the chairman so he's aware. Okay, Councillor Amos, you can speak first then.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, regarding the planning application DA 220-0312 Halifax Lodge Everton, I was made aware of the circumstances at the beginning of June, which I have followed and commented on numerous occasions. Everton's Parish Council have worked very hard to get their concerns on this over about this build in the conservation area without permission, other than random comments made by the case officer and heritage officer, and nothing really in writing at that time. Only when I should say it was a far too late stop order was put on the project, woefully late, as the works were more or less completed by then. Now, the parish council requested answers to their many questions relating to the newly built property. For instance, no planning application, ignoring a stop notice, removal of trees, demolition of conservatory, additional windows, and rendering and painting. And in spite of requests by the parish council and myself in conversation with the case officer, no response has been forthcoming. Now, regarding the rendering and the render being painted white, on a verbal agreement by the case officer, the present and new condition asks that the applicant now is going to change this white to, for instance, a heritage grey or something similar. Now, I'm quite bewildered by this, as I am wondering, and I think by implication, that DDC may be responsible for changing, for the costs basically of changing the colour, but is also responsible in perpetuity for the rendering and repainting of this over time. And I think that we would say that, considering all the points raised, we are maybe to assume that the application, albeit retrospective, is in line with the most recent government announcements, whereby homeowners are no longer required to put in for planning permission. And if so, DDC Conservation and Planning are ahead of the game with Halifax Lodge. So really, I say I am bewildered a little as to why everybody went so quiet, and certainly never answered the Everton Parish Council's questions basically at all. So yeah, I leave that with you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Amos. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair.
Chairman, sorry, before Councillor Smith comes in, the Eamon would like to come back on the comments by Councillor Amos.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Just to be clear, there has been no formal stop notice served on this property. So the council, if we were to serve an enforcement notice, we would have had to sought the agreement of you as planning committee, as I understand the current arrangements. Enforcement is not just about serving formal stop notices or taking immediate action. It's about negotiation and giving people the benefit of submitting planning applications as allowed for by the planning system. So I'm sure you as planning members who sit on the planning committee regularly come across retrospective applications. So for those who don't sit on the planning committee, you may not be so familiar with the processes. And as I indicated in the introduction to the application, yes, this is a retrospective application, but you cannot penalise an applicant simply because they've submitted a retrospective application. You have to judge it on its planning merits as you see it against your existing policies. So just to be clear, there isn't any formal notice served on the property. The officer was in discussions with the applicants in respect of it and did advise a stop at works. We were in the height of the pandemic as well, which did cause delays in terms of communication, etc. The officer did also respond to the parish council and give them a response to some of the queries that they raised. Other queries were not responded to because simply that is not the forum to discuss the merits of the application. Planning committee is the forum to discuss the merits of the planning application. Now, you members are entitled to go against the advice of officers, having regard to your development plan policies and having regard to the representations you've received. That's what you're entitled to do, and that's your job tonight. So this is the forum to correctly respond to the concerns of the local members and the concerns of the parish council. And I will leave it with you to make a decision on the application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ivan. Right. Over to you then, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Members, please listen to me this evening, because there has been an effect on St Mary's Church from this works. I'm very, very familiar with this particular property. It was very well screened prior to the works taking place, these recent works. You pretty much you couldn't really see from the churchyard the Halifax Lodge. In fact, we actually had a reference to the view from the churchyard in some of our recent training. This has had an adverse effect. I know from a planning perspective that there's not a great deal we can do because it's already happened. But I think had we been presented with this and that you'd seen trees that were actually shielding this property, I think you would have a very, very different view. I'm disappointed with the applicant, to be honest. Yeah, they've created a much nicer property than that was there prior. It was in a serious state. The roof was coming off almost. So yes, it's been improved. The property has been improved, and yes, it will comply from a planning perspective, but it has ruined the view from St Mary's Church. There is no question. I don't support this. Yes, this will likely go through, but it is despicable that something such as this can happen where a conservation area, which was rightly in place, and works have taken place which had an adverse effect. And the render, I have to say, prior to the render going on, it was a brick, well, it clearly still is a brick built property, but it's brick. So again, it wasn't screaming out at you. And the views you see now from the front, well, it completely changed the street scene. It's just so wrong. Anyway, that's all I can say. I'm very disappointed.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Tony, speakers.
Councillor Wesley, Chairman.
Councillor Wesley.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm confused by this. I know we can't punish people for retrospective planning permission, but this, I mean, I've been in that churchyard a number of times, and I was quite surprised when I saw when I did see the pictures on the planning on the planning portal. It just seemed totally weird that this has actually been allowed to happen and go through, but I'm not really sure what we can do about it at this point with the application that's in front of us. I'm confused on this one, I'm afraid. I hope some other members have got some guidance for me.
Thank you. Any other members indicating they wish to speak, Tony?
Councillor Harris, Chairman.
Councillor Harris, then.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just briefly, this is definitely one of those very difficult areas because a number of us have conservation areas, and you know, I take Eamon's comment that we have to take it on the merits of the application in front of us, not the fact that it was retrospective. But this is an issue that faces all of us, and we all have various policies to protect our conservation areas. So I'm afraid I can't share any clear light for Councillor Wesley as a way forward, but I'm also not entirely impressed that it seems to be so easy to be able just to do what you want to do and then seek you know, retrospective planning without any consequence. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Councillor Matton, Chairman, and Councillor Frost.
Thank you. Councillor Matton first, followed by Frost. Councillor Matton.
I first of all would like to agree with my fellow councillors with regard to not being happy about it. Having said that, we are where we are, and taking the advice of our officers, we have put in the conditions that the colour of the rendering is going to be dulled, shall we say, to try and change the impact it's having from the church. And what's more, in the conditions, I believe it's laid down that more barriers by way of planting should also try to prevent the damage to the view from the back of the church. So we are where we are, and I don't see grounds for being able to reject the application.
Thank you. Councillor Frost.
Thank you, Chairman. I fully endorse, completely agree with Councillors Amos and Smith. I'd like to propose that we refuse this on the grounds that it's contradictory to policy, as in the you know, the planning document, the contrary to policy BN5 of the West Northants Joint Core Strategy. It's against contrary to policy ENV 7 of the Local Plan Part 2 and Chapter 16 of the NPPF. For those grounds, I'd like to propose it's refused.
Thank you. Before I ask for a seconder, you want to comment on those grounds, Eamon?
You're muted, Eamon.
Chairman, just for your benefit, I will read an extract from the Conservation Officer's comments. We don't reproduce their comments in absolute full, but she has visited the site, and these are comments back on the 21st of May. I walked along Bethel Lane and then turned round and approached the village. The house sits quite low down and is not prominent in views back towards the elevated church. So I do not consider there would be any material change. I also viewed the site from the churchyard. It is the newly rendered finish of the existing house that has the greatest impact on these views. The plot is enclosed behind an established hedge. The proposed changes to the front elevation is detailed, and the replacement would have little impact. So for those who know the Conservation Area Officer concerned, Rachel Booth, if she felt there were good grounds for recommending this application to be refused, I'm sure she would have communicated that to the case officer. The facts are that she is satisfied from a heritage point of view that the proposal will not result in any adverse impact that would warrant refusal of the application, and there are sufficient conditions in place to mitigate that impact. So whilst I note your concerns about heritage issues, I simply advise you that the Conservation Officer, who has been consulted on the application, doesn't necessarily share all of those concerns. Thanks, Chairman.
Do you wish to continue with your proposal with those reasons?
Yeah, if that's a question aimed at me, yes, absolutely. I completely understand and respect.
You've just been told that it won't be supported. It wasn't supported by the Conservation Officer.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay.
I heard that loud and clear.
Okay, I'll ask for a seconder then. Do we have a seconder for the proposal for the given reasons?
Councillor Smith indicating, Chairman.
Yes, okay. Right. You don't wish to speak again, Councillor Smith, do you, at the moment?
Yes, I do. Please.
Okay.
So the trees that shielded this property from St Mary's were removed very, very early on. I think probably in February, maybe. I need that to be confirmed. But the cover that property enjoyed with regard to those trees was removed. So walking up the road, once they've gone, of course, you're going to form a different opinion to that you would have had the trees been there. So I don't support that. I'm very, very familiar with this area, very familiar with it. So no, I don't agree with the Conservation Officer's opinion on this particular property. It is rare that I would disagree with her, but on this occasion, I do. It would be rather nice if we could have had some photographs presented showing what the property looked like in the past with the tree cover it did enjoy. But St Mary's has been adversely affected by this, and the render, if this does go through this evening, I would like there to be a condition that the render is much darker than the proposed heritage chalk, so much closer to that the property was originally in, which was brick. Members, I know time is getting on, but believe me, this has drastically affected St Mary's. It has affected the conservation area. Let's not make a mockery of our conservation areas. You know, we have a beautiful district, and things, development such as this is not to be encouraged. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any more speakers, Tony?
None indicated, Chairman.
Right, we have a proposal the application be refused for the given reasons that Councillor Frost gave. I'm not going to repeat them because I didn't write them down, but I'm sure officers have them. It has been seconded.
Chairman.
All those in. All those in favour?
Chairman, sorry, just before you go to the vote, Eamon wishes to speak, and I think we do need clarification of the planning reason.
Okay.
Yeah, Chair.
Over to you, Eamon.
Can you hear me, Chairman?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'll be perfectly frank. I wasn't absolutely clear on Councillor Frost's proposition in terms of the reasons for refusal. We have heard comments from other members about adverse impact on the church, but to be frank, I think Councillor Frost's proposition was somewhat grey, shall we say, in terms of identifying specific harm and specific policies that are breached. I do take a point. He has mentioned policy EN7 and chapter 16 of the MPPF. That was the only two things that I picked up on. If there are other comments, I would like to hear them or spelled out so at least members are clear about the reasons why they're refusing the application or voting on refusing the application, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, I'll ask. Right, Councillor Frost, can you repeat them, please?
Sure, I certainly will. And thank you, Chairman.
Slowly, so we can all hear.
Sure. I'd also like to respond to a point that was made previously, if I may, on the point that Rachel Booth's opinion is that the area hasn't been spoilt and nor has the heritage asset value and things. That view has to be countered with the view of the two ward councillors that you've heard speak very eloquently, and the views of the people living locally, whose views are represented by the parish council that we heard earlier. So I hear and respect Rachel's opinion, but it is contrary to that on the ground. I also want to say to people who can access Google while we do this, that right now you can see on Google Earth, Map, Street View, whatever you want to call it, what it looked previously. And just as Councillor Smith said, this is a really, really lovely, special village. You can see there that the brick fascia that it existed before, it's perfectly in keeping with the village. And it's just such a shame that it's been spoilt. But anyway, let me deal with Eamon's points head on. I quoted directly from page 102 because I'm very aware that you need to give specific planning reasons if you're going to go against officers' advice, and that was why I simply quoted the text that's already written there. That is policy BN5 of the West Northampton Joint Core Strategy, policy ENV7 of the Local Plan Part 2, and chapter 16 of the National Policy Planning Framework, as well as all the guidelines in the Everton Conservation Area. For those reasons, I reiterate my suggested refusal of the planning application.
Thank you. And the seconder, are you clear that those are the reasons, Councillor Smith?
Yes, very clear, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, over
Chairman.
to you, Eamon. Do you wish to comment on them?
Can you hear me, Chairman?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. I note the policies. What I'm seeking to understand is what is the harm, what is the conflict with those policies? Is it an adverse impact on the setting of the church? Is it an adverse impact on the character and appearance of the conservation area, which we have a duty to consider when discharging our duties on planning applications? So if members are saying there's an adverse impact on the character and appearance of the conservation area and the setting of the listed building, and therefore it's in breach of those policies, I have a greater understanding of where members are coming from. Thank you, Chairman.
Do you wish to comment?
Yeah, many thanks. My view is that it's both, and that in fact this application does both. It's far from protecting the designated area and assessing the heritage assets. It manifestly spoils what is otherwise a very, very lovely village and a very lovely part of the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, because my internet is starting to be a bit iffy, I'm afraid. Right. if there's no more comments, we can now go to a vote, can't we?
Chairman, you've got other speakers indicated, Councillor Smith and Councillor Ritchie.
Councillor Smith has just spoken. Councillor Ritchie, then.
Thank you, Chair. I've been slightly concerned that this discussion has almost become a debate between members and the officers. Of course, it's right that we actually rely on their expertise, their guidance to help us actually formulate our ideas. But I thought that enough has been said for it to be clear to officers what those who are proposing rejection of this application, where they're coming from. Can we not have a little bit of help and guidance from the officers along the lines, if these are our views, how do we best express these in terms of the in terms of planning policy? How do we best do it? I just sense a certain negativity about that. And of course, it's right that officers warn us if we are going in a direction that is likely to be a difficult one. But whatever direction we decide to go as the elected members, it's surely the job of the officers to help us to get there.
Chairman, if I can just come in on that point, I believe that's what the planning officer was doing. He was trying to assist Councillor Frost to come up with a reason that could be defended. Thank you.
To be fair to the officers, they have written a report and they've given you their professional views. They can't suddenly now turn their professional views round the opposite way. They've got to defend them at appeal as well. But you will make the decision. Anyway, do we have any more speakers, Tony, or not?
Chairman, our legal officer would like to come in. And can I just take the opportunity through you to advise the agent that he has no further right to speak?
Well, I wasn't aware that he was speaking, but
he's
yes.
been waving his hand, Chairman. But I just need to explain to him we can't come back to him. But I believe the legal officer would like to say something.
Yeah. Okay. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think in relation to the discussions that are going on, it is important to realise that, as one of the councillors says, we are where we are, and it is on the basis that a boundary scheme has been submitted and needs to be planted out, etc. And in effect, a colour of the rendering is to be submitted and agreed with the council. I'm just a little bit concerned as to what you're hoping to achieve by refusing this. When were it to be appealed, I'm, as your legal officer, I'm supporting the planning officer by saying, if your argument is simply that you don't like it as to what's happened, it's how can planning, which is the regulatory element, not a punitive element, seek to correct the position as best they can, as opposed to what's before you, when in effect a boundary scheme has been submitted. The trees can't go back, they have gone, and a colour is to be agreed with the council as to the rendering. I'm just conscious that you should be aware that if it is a subjective view that you're wishing to maintain that this falls down on, that the heritage offer is in disagreement with you on that. I'm not saying you're not entitled to do that, but I think it is important that you are aware as to that position. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jamie. If
Chair,
there are no more...
Chairman, I think we've got two more speakers, Councillor Wesley and Councillor Harris, and Councillor Smith as well now. Councillor Wesley, Councillor Harris, Councillor Smith.
Right, in that order. Councillor Wesley.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. As I said before, I am confused about remedy on this, because undoubtedly we would not have given planning permission for the removal of those screening trees and probably the colour of the render etc. on the property. Obviously, I can't say that, but from the words that I've heard tonight, we probably wouldn't have given that planning permission. So no, we're not punitive. But what is our remedy for someone that's riding roughshod over policy, or appears to be riding roughshod over policy? And the only thing that I can see is the possibility that we actually say on the screening that we insist that they plant semi-mature trees in place, and maybe put something in place for some fast growing and then removal while the mature trees catch up, and that we do agree that the render should be of a colour that's, as Councillor Smith said, that's darker and more in keeping with the area in general. If that's our remedy, then maybe that's the way that we should go. If somebody can just go and do whatever they want to, and then we can't do anything because it's happened, we can't do anything about it, then maybe we should just be a little bit stricter on the conditions. I mean, as I said, I'm still confused on this as to what we can do, but it's really annoying that somebody can go ahead and wreck a conservation area, and then we go, yeah, okay, then plant a hedge. 20 years time it might be all right, but up to then it ain't.
Thank you. Who was the next one, Tony?
Councillor Harris, Chairman.
Councillor Harris, that's right.
Thank you, Chair. Really, it's just an echo of Councillor Wesley's comments, really. I think that's the issue that the majority of us have here. I know we have to look at each planning application on its own merits. However, if you are watching this tonight and viewing it and you have a desire to do whatever you like in a conservation area, effectively it seems to be a bit of a green light without much that we can do. So to be practical, I think Councillor Wesley's suggestion is probably moving in the right direction in terms of ensuring that mature trees are put back in place to add to screening. Definitely, obviously, we have to take the guidance in terms of the colour of the property itself. But I think that's the frustration that you're seeing. This is directed at officers. Is fundamentally, it feels that our hands are tied a little bit if things come to this committee after the event and it's retrospective. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Smith. No, Councillor Parker. Smith, I beg your pardon, Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe it would assist if officers were able to get a street scene from Google Maps to show what screening was there, because the difference is stark to that we have. And whether it would certainly, if such imagery exists, it would be useful, I'm sure. But I think with regard to Councillor Wesley's comments concerning mature trees, I mean, they would have to be significant mature trees, but that's not my problem to find such trees. But I mean, that clearly would aid the repair to a certain extent of the street scene, but we still have an effect on the conservation area, adverse effect, and we still have an adverse effect on St Mary's, a beautiful church. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, Tony?
Chairman, Councillor Frost and Councillor Ritchie.
Right. After that, I'm going to go to a vote.
Sure, fair enough. I know you've kindly given me the chance to talk lots on this. I just want to say that I absolutely understand and appreciate what Eamon said about viewing this, judgment not being skewed. There's nothing sort of punitive about this. I'm imagining that this had never happened, and that it's come as an application to put the rendering on and take down the trees. I guess I'm effectively suggesting we put it back as it currently now looks on Google Earth. You can see that quite clearly, a lovely brick exterior, and put the trees back as best we can. That's what I'm suggesting by asking members to agree to refuse this application. Thank you, Chairman.
That wasn't part of the original proposal.
Well, I'm effectively by asking to refuse the application, I'm dealing head on with the points made by Eamon that it's not a punitive thing. The natural effect or result of this would be the planning committee would be saying that they liked it as it was. That's what I'm trying to say.
So what reason do you want for refusing it then?
The reasons are the same as before. I'm just trying to deal with the point made by Eamon that it's nothing to do. My judgment and view is not being skewed by the fact that this is a retrospective issue. It's based on a desire a wish that had never happened, and actually a belief that things can be put back as they should be by taking off the render and putting back as trees as best we can.
Thank you. Who was the last one, Tony?
We've got Councillor Ritchie, Chairman, but Eamon has indicated he'd like to come back.
Councillor Ritchie and who, sorry?
Eamon.
Eamon, right. Councillor Ritchie, Eamon, then the vote. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. Really just quite a quick one. I'm looking at page 103. You've got the conditions in condition 4. Would it be terribly difficult to get up on the screen the drawing to which reference is made? I just feel I would feel uncomfortable if we were not asking for as strong conditions as we possibly could, just to make sure that thank you. Just make sure we're doing everything that we can to try to restore this, this property, not to its dilapidated state, but at least to its former appearance and in terms of vegetation. I feel uncomfortable being asked to vote on this at the moment. I just would feel that there was need for another report that should actually set out what would the different options be to make this building much more in keeping with Everton and its conservation area. I don't know if the officers can simply say something about what the agreed boundary scheme is in terms of planting and replanting.
Okay.
Do you want me to respond, Chairman?
Yeah, Eamon. Yeah, you're speaking last.
Yeah,
your answer.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Again, the intention of the condition, both condition 4 and condition 5, is to retain sort of this frontage hedge, and also to that end. Again, members are entitled to say, well, no, we want a full landscape scheme, and impose a condition to that effect, irrespective of what's shown in that drawing, and you can impose a condition to that effect. Equally, you can simply go with the recommendation to refuse, and we'll see what happens at an appeal. I should also point out condition 5. Without that, the intention of that was to retain the hedgerows, etc., and effectively to avoid any new fencing or new means of enclosure being constructed here, which in theory could have been constructed at any time in the last sort of year or so, or few years, or even when the house was first occupied. So I think you've had the legal advice, which is, it's not a punitive system. You recognize it's not a punitive system. You don't like what's happened. We accept that. Nobody likes dealing with retrospective applications, but you've got to focus on what can you do to both to regularize and mitigate its impact. Officers have put to you what we think is reasonable, is proportionate, is necessary to mitigate that impact. You're entitled to come to take it further if you wish, if you feel that you can justify those conditions. Equally, you're entitled to refuse the application, but it doesn't take us any further forward. It simply leaves us in a situation where you've got a half-complete works and trees that have been taken out. I mean, I should point out, the trees, again, this is the opportunity where we can look to impose a condition to try to replace or seek replacement in an appropriate manner. But that's your choice. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. Well, we'll go on the vote. Can we take this away to the pictures? We'll go to the vote that the application be refused for the reasons that were given first. Should that vote fail and we do get and it go the other way, well, then we'll discuss any conditions that the committee might want to put on it should it go the other way. Okay, so that's how we'll deal with it. We'll take this vote first. If that fails, we'll have another proposition the opposite way. If that goes through, then we'll add any conditions that the committee are happy with, right? So we have a proposition that the application be refused, which has been seconded. Again, over to you, Catherine, for the count.
Thank you, Chair. If you could indicate whether you're for, against or abstaining. Councillor Chandler.
Against.
Councillor Dabbs.
Against.
Councillor Frost.
For.
Councillor Harris.
Abstain.
Councillor Irving Swift.
Against.
Councillor James.
Councillor
No,
James.
sorry, he's not there, is he? Councillor Longley. Councillor Longley.
He's
Not
there.
there.
No, we've lost Councillor Longley.
Okay. Councillor Matton.
Against.
Councillor Parker.
Against.
Councillor Ritchie.
Abstain.
Councillor Robertson.
Against, for goodness sake.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Wesley.
I'm abstaining on this one.
Thank you. 3 abstaining. So that's 2 in favour, 6 against and 3 abstaining.
You're happy with that, Tony?
Yes, so the proposition is lost, Chairman.
Yeah, the proposition is lost. So now I can see your hand, Councillor Irving Swift. I need a proposition the other way. Councillor Irving Swift.
Yes, I would like to propose the other way, but maybe as Eamon said, to have a more stringent condition on the landscaping and how it could be helping. So that would be maybe a good compromise to re-establish as good relationship with everybody. Thank you.
Right, so you're proposing approval. Eamon, does she need to go deeper with the landscaping proposals, or are you happy that if she broadly says landscaping? I've got the solicitor putting his hand up. Solicitor, can you help us?
Yeah, yes, and through Eamon really see whether he's happy with it. What is seen before is that in effect is that boundary scheme is to be submitted and agreed.
Yeah.
Whereby that it's obvious through these discussions what is being looked at, and that could be either in consultation with yourself as chair, and if no agreement is reached, you can come back to committee. That would be because in effect that could be a way to deal with it if you wanted to deal with it prior to issuing the permission, or you could have the condition whereby it's in agreement. But I'll leave you to Eamon too.
Thank you.
Again, through you, Chairman, I'm obliged to Jamie. Yes, I understand the proposition being put forward by the councillor. In effect, the condition 4 will be replaced with effectively a more comprehensive landscape scheme that seeks to, again, enhance or at least preserve the conservation area as was. Clearly, we've got evidence as to how we get back to that, but a landscape scheme will enable that to rectify the wrongs, shall we say. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. So we're all clear then. The proposition includes exactly what Eamon has just said. Do we have a seconder?
Yeah,
right, I've got a hand.
Chair.
Yes.
We also have the question of the render, and even with the chalk render, it's still significantly visible. It does not blend in at all with the proposed colour of the render at the moment. I've looked with the benefit of Google and looked at what the render would be in Heritage Chalk, and that is still somewhat bright, to say the least, compared to the brick colour that was there previously.
Well, again, could we again say the similar thing with the rendering as we did with the planting, that it has to be Eamon again as an officer, realises what the committee feel about the rendering side. So can we do the same thing? Are you happy with that, Cecile, or not? Councillor Irving Swift.
The thing is, we have had such a long discussion when I think we had a huge planning application at the beginning and that went so quickly. Now it's, the trouble is the house is not listed. It's in the conservation area. I think if they go on appeal, it's going to make us a bit foolish. I think if the trees are there, it will do what it is, because no color, I think a gray color, at least it's render. If we go to a dark color, it was never going to be brick. In fact, for me, it seems that a gray color will be better than a brownish color, because that I think it would be even more awful than. So I think if the, and Rachel Booth, our officer for listed building, would have had a saying that matters. So I am quite happy with a grey color. I don't want to change, because otherwise the applicant can take us in front of to appeal, and we will make a mockery of us. So no, I am happy with what I propose.
Thank you. Now, did we have a seconder for that? Peter Matton, Councillor Matton, you're seconding.
Yes, I would like to second it. I'd also like to point out that condition 3 states that before any further work is to be carried out to the walls, a sample of the render, including finished colour, shall have been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. So that's already in there. And I would like to second Councillor Irving Swift's proposal that a full landscaping plan will be agreed by the planning officers prior to, but we approve this with that additional condition.
Thank you, Councillor Matton. Anybody else wish to speak on this proposal?
Chairman, you've got Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Smith indicating they wish to speak.
Councillor Ritchie first, followed by Councillor Smith.
Just to say, Chair, I'm slightly unhappy that at this stage in the evening, after this discussion, we're effectively saying to the officers, go off and do something and try and interpret what it is that we actually want. I would have been much happier, and I accept that this might not be a majority position, if we were to say that we were going to defer a decision in this and ask the officers to come back at another meeting with a program of works that would be part of the conditions, that you know, rather than just saying, look, you know, try and interpret what we've been saying, we leave it to you.
Well, what's been interpreted in the proposal is the complete committee, I believe, feel that a substantial landscaping scheme needs to be introduced as a condition. The planning officer is happy with that, and all the colour of the building is already conditioned anyway. So I don't think it's quite as bad as you're saying. Anyway, that's just my comment. Right, Councillor Smith.
Sorry to bore everybody, but I hear what some councillors are saying about much bigger applications, but you know, each and every one we have to judge on its merits. So this discussion, it's important we have this discussion, and I'm sorry that it's 9 o'clock at night and we're having it, but you know, I take all applications seriously, and I'm sure every other councillor does. And sometimes the applications that one expects to take just moments takes quite a lot of moments. But it's important, you know, the heritage of our district. I mean, if we could just, when we look at the render, I'd like it to be a nice render than the horrendous render. So if we can tone it down, it would be great. I mean, anybody who's familiar with the site and would appreciate it, and it won't affect the amenity for the resident. So yeah, if we can get it toned down, and let's get it so we notice the church, not this Halifax lodge. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. No more people indicating, Tony?
None indicated, Chairman.
Right, we'll go to the vote then. We have a proposal that the application be approved, coupled with substantial landscaping which the officer recognises. That has been seconded. All those in favour, please indicate to our good officer who will do a roll call.
Thank you, Chair. If you could indicate whether you're for, against or abstaining. Councillor Chandler.
For.
Councillor Dabbs.
For.
Councillor Frost.
Against.
Councillor Harris.
For.
Councillor Irving Swift.
For.
We've still not got Councillor Longley? No.
No.
Councillor Matton.
For.
Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Ritchie.
Abstain.
Councillor Robertson.
I think Councillor Robertson's left the
Gone.
meeting.
Okay. Councillor Smith.
Against.
Councillor Wesley.
For.
I've got 7.
7. I've got 7.
7 for, 2 against and 1 abstention.
Yep.
Okay, the application is approved, subject to the stronger wording condition about greater landscaping plus the other conditions. Right, we move.
Chairman.
We move on.
Chairman.
Yes.
Just before you move, I think we just need to check whether Councillor James is still in the waiting room to invite him back in. But
He's probably fell asleep.
He isn't in the waiting room. I have contacted him and advised him that he will need to click back on the link. So we have been in touch.
Right. Oh, okay.
You're a very efficient officer, Jill. Brilliant. So shall we wait for him then? I just heard a duh-duh. Does that mean he's back?
No, that was somebody else leaving, Chairman, I think.
Is it that bad?
I don't think they'll be the only one.
Yeah. Chairman, I suggest you move on.
Right, okay. So the last one is a tree report. Who's doing this? Eamon. Thank you.
Right, Chairman, can you hear me and can you see the
we can indeed.
Slides? Right, I'll quickly go through this. This is a big house with a big garden with lots of trees. It's been sold off. We don't want the trees to be lost, so we've imposed a tree preservation order on it. And we're asking you to confirm that tree preservation order. It comprises a group of sycamores, ash and a holly tree. We've got some photographs showing said trees. It's not in a conservation area, so it doesn't benefit from any automatic protection, hence the tree preservation order. That will obviously be a material consideration should we receive any future applications when we don't have any applications. Suffice it to say, if members agree it, the trees will be protected and will require consent for any works to them. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Eamon. Well, this is good, sensible logic. So, committee, I need a, yeah. Actually, does the local member wish to say anything for a start? Councillor Ritchie? No.
I'm not local. I live next door to it, but I'm a Daventry councillor.
You're not the local. That's right.
I'm therefore delighted to see this paper here, but I'll feel obliged to perhaps abstain.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Irving Swift then, who's shaking her hand like mad, so I think she wants to go home.
I would like to propose that we go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Second, right below Councillor Smith. You're happy? Wish to say anything, Councillor Smith?
No, thank you, Chair.
No. Okay. Anybody wish to say anything? Great.
None indicated,
Right,
Chairman.
Sorry?
No one indicated, Chairman.
Good. Well, we have a proposal that the officer's recommendation go through. Do we need to do a roll call on this one, Tony, or not?
I think we should, Chairman, just for completeness.
Okay, over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Chair. If you could indicate whether you're for, against or abstaining. Councillor Chandler.
For.
Councillor Dabbs.
For.
Councillor Frost.
For.
Councillor Harris.
For.
Councillor Irving Swift.
For.
We don't have Councillor James. We don't have Councillor Longley. Councillor Matton.
For.
Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Ritchie.
Abstain on the grounds of a possible interest.
Councillor Robertson, I think we've lost.
Yeah.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Wesley.
For.
Thank you. Got 9.
Yep.
9 for and 1 abstention.
Right, that is clearly carried. Right, can I thank you all for attending? Thanks for taking part. Very good debate tonight, actually. It wasn't poor at all. So thank all of you. Sorry if I made a couple of mistakes, but it happens. So good night to you all, and see you in 3 or 4 weeks' time.
Thank you.
Thank you, and
Thank
good night.
you.